I'm calling the Board of Supervisors meeting of August 20th to order. Our first item is the Pledge of Allegiance, and our clerk of the board, Alicia Jamar, is going to lead us.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're going to do a little hopscotching around the agenda this morning. So the first thing we're going to do is oral communications in a second, and then we're going to do the consent calendar minus a couple of items we're pulling. Then we're going to do item 13 and 14 because there are some people here that probably don't want to wait for a few hours to go through those. Then we're going to go into closed session for about 45 minutes to an hour. And then we're going to come out and we're going to talk about the main agenda item for today, which is our budget for this year and the coming months. So if you're in the audience for that and you want to take a little bit of a break or whatever, feel free to do so, please, quietly while we do the agenda. But I just wanted to give everybody a heads up on that. So right now, we're going to go into oral communications. We have 15 minutes set aside for this. The public may speak on any item not on the printed agenda. No action may be taken by the board. So, sir, you're up.
I'm Randy Ray, citizen Twain Hart, living there 55 years between Miwok and here.
I'm sorry. You got that free, but I am going to put a 3-minute time limit on the oral communications.
Quick. The bottom line, one, tree issue in Miwok. There's a particular house on Lama Tamlin. It's 3 doors down on the right-hand side. There's a tree that's dead for the last 5 years. It's leaning over a friend of mine, neighbor's house, and they have not been able to use their cabin for the last 2 years because they were too scared. It's gonna fall over. Their yard is full of grass. This particular church has volunteers for the CAL FIRE, and they go around and they choose the houses they want to write up versus the ones that aren't. And I have a house, and next door there's 3 to 4 feet of dry grass just as well. They didn't even get rowed up. I did get rowed up, but my problems are over. The other thing, we have an issue with our roads. Part of your budget, we need to work on our roads serious. Main roads first, and our aprons. Grind up the asphalt, put the asphalt on the edges of the aprons so people aren't tearing their cars up if they do get off the edge of the apron. So there's not a foot drop off.
Okay.
So anyway, I just want to, first my opinion.
Okay,
Thank you.
One moment, please. Could you see, Jason, could you get some details on this gentleman's problem and see what we can do about it? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Yes, ma'am. Again, 3 minutes, please.
Good morning, Chairman Rotifer, Board of Supervisors. Thank you for giving me some time. I realize that there's a lot of the budget that is already in process right now. And what I'm here today is I'm here as a single parent of a child who has been in need of child care that I could not easily afford.
Ma'am?
Yes.
Does this have to do with the budget item?
No.
Okay.
I want to give my input into the youth centers.
Okay, that's a budget item, so
Oh,
I
I
can't
wasn't aware
allow
of
you
that.
to address that now. You'll have to come back when we're discussing that item on the budget.
I wasn't aware that was on the budget. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Good morning, Quincy Yaley, Community Resources Agency. I just wanted to take this opportunity to let you and the public know that next week on Thursday and Friday, the 4th floor of our building, which includes planning, environmental health, building, and housing, will be closed. Inspections and field work will continue as scheduled, and the 3rd floor will also be open. If there's any questions, individuals can contact our office at 533-5633. Thank you.
Okay, so that's 533-5633.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Good morning. As Tuolumne County's town crier, I came to announce some local community events. So on Thursday, starting at 4:45, there's going to be some tours of the new buildings at Curtis Creek Elementary School on all their new classrooms, which were built by Royce Construction. For all of you who got mad at Evan when he wasn't here all the time, come out and see what he's been doing. The Oddfellows are going to be doing a living history tour on September 21st, and they're doing a cemetery cleanup on September 14th if anyone would like to join them and help out. The Native Sons of the Golden West are going to be doing a Statehood Day parade on September 7th. It's 169th Happy Birthday Day, and they would like a big crowd of anyone who's been associated with the history of our area. The History Museum is looking for people to help with the 4th grade historical tours of downtown Sonora. So tomorrow, August 21st at 9 a.m. at the Opera House, there's going to be some training on that if you're interested. So for anyone who's fond of our history, please show up and help these groups out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, I appreciate the audience's patience. And with that, will the clerk of the board please read the consent calendar minus, I'm pulling item 9, and I believe that item 3 was previously pulled. So if you'll read the consent calendar 1, 2, 4 through 8, and 10 through 12.
And just to clarify that the items that are pulled will be heard at a later date. They're not
Yes,
pulled for
they are
discussion.
pulled for a later date.
Okay, so the minutes of the meeting held August 6th, 7th, 8th, and August 13th, 2019, that's a mistake on that one. Approving the retroactive out-of-state travel for Carl Rutherford its attendance at NACO Annual Conference, July 11th through 15th, 2019. Approving the discharge of accountability for 30 accounts totaling $76,614.94 in the Ambulance Enterprise Fund. Approving the standard agreement with professional services for Sycamore Environmental Consulting, Inc. for biological services associated with the Jackson Road Bridge preventative maintenance project, and including the optional tasks and authorizing the chair to sign. Adopting a resolution authorizing the application for an SB2 non-competitive award with an estimate allocation of $160,000 to update county plans to streamline housing approvals and accelerate housing production, including Community Resource Agency Director signature authority. Adopting a resolution authorizing the district attorney to apply for a California Office of Emergency Services Victim Witness request for application. Approving an agreement with Oracle America, Inc. for PeopleSoft Enterprise license and service fees, and terminating the unused PeopleSoft module. Number 9's pulled. And then approve the appointment of Catherine O'Hearn to the Columbia Cemetery District, accepting the resignation of Peter Giolito from the Air Pollution Control District Hearing Board, and Donna Mize and Chantel Fowler of the Local Child Care Planning, Development and Planning Council, and directing the clerk to send a letter of appreciation and post a notice of vacancies.
Okay, is there any public comment on those? Come on up.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I would like to address item number 8, the Oracle contract. I guess the question I have is that they're showing a one-time increase of $386,000, apparently driven by some sort of formula. My question is regarding the county licensing portion. How many seats or licenses is this contract for?
Do you want to, Carlin, you want to address that?
Or maybe Roger's here.
Roger, come on up.
Morning, Board. Roger Root, your IT Director.
Yeah, I didn't see you in the back.
I was hiding. So it's actually for 1,200 seats, but the increase is because our budget increased since 1989 over $100 million.
Okay. So with that in mind, first of all, how many seats, how many people would actually use this software?
So it's actually not just based on how many use it, it's actually based on the number of employees the county has. And their licensing has a discount break at 1,200. So anything below 1,200 was a certain cost. Our agreement in 1989 allowed us to not have an increase as long as our budget did not increase by an additional $100 million over that course of time. In fiscal year 17-18, our budget increased beyond that $100 million, and that's what caused the increase in the license fee.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm sorry, just for clarification, is it typical then that the amount of a budget is part of the formula for these types of licenses? I thought it was normally the number of seats.
Yeah, it is typical with any system that manages the financials that the amount of the budget and your revenue is included in your license fees.
Okay. Yeah, my concern kind of goes back to something that happened with the state in the year 2001, where Oracle entered into a contract with the state, essentially supplying the entire state with Oracle licenses, $95 million. They ended up canceling that contract. But, by licenses, it just seems like an extraordinary amount to go up this amount in 1 year. And I understand there's a formula, but Oracle is very aggressive in their pricing, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other public comment?
I just have a quick one. So, Carmianis, up from Ewok. With this great software program, we couldn't predict this $7 million shortfall? No further questions.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, bring it back to the board.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the consent calendar.
Okay, just for clarification, that's minus items 3 and 9 from the printed consent calendar. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstain. I've got it 5-0. Okay, again, we're going to take 13 and 14, then we're going to go into closed session. So will the clerk? It's pulled completely, I'm sorry. So will the clerk of the board please read item 13?
This is consideration of adopting a resolution proclaiming August 2019 as Child Support Awareness Month in Tuolumne County.
Good morning, Chairman,
morning.
members of the board. My name is Julie Prado. I'm the director of the Central Sierra Child Support Agency. With me here is Leanne Platt, the deputy director of the agency. We are grateful to be here this morning to ask you to declare the month of August Child Support Awareness Month here for Tuolumne County. We are a county department that functions under the umbrella of a JPA, so we function a little differently. We deliver services for Tuolumne County, Calaveras, Amador, and Alpine. We do not take general fund money. We're funded directly from the state and federal government. One of the opportunities for us to be in front of you today is to thank Supervisor Gray and Supervisor Campbell for your leadership, being on our board and helping us through these last couple of years have been, it's been difficult, and other supervisors, Brendan and others who have been members of our board. We appreciate your leadership. It's also an opportunity for me to congratulate our staff who work day in and day out. We have 35 employees. We collect over $11.5 million for children in our communities. Of that $11.5 million, over $5.6 million goes to children and families right here in Tuolumne County. We are serving currently just over 2,000 children in this county. So I want to congratulate our staff for the work that they do day in and day out. We deliver services to families who need establishment of parentage, establishment of medical child support orders, and collection on those orders. Our services are free, and we also have a goal of extending services to families to help kind of be that wraparound for them and to connect them to other agencies within the community. And it's also an opportunity for us to allow the community members and families of this community to know that we're here and we are available to them, and that we have the capacity to serve more children. And we do believe that there's more children in our communities that need our help. We just need to find ways to reach them. So one of our missions this year is to continue to do outreach and find those families to provide those services to them. So our request of you today is to declare the month of August as Child Support Awareness Month. It is an event that's celebrated nationwide. This year, the theme of the event is "You Are There for Them, We Will Be There for You." And so I'd like to ask you to allow my Deputy Director here to read the proclamation resolution for you.
Please.
Thank you.
Good morning. Whereas the vision of the Central Sierra Child Support Agency is partnering with families to create self-sufficiency, and whereas the professional staff of the Central Sierra Child Support Agency worked diligently to fulfill this vision by partnering with families involved in more than 5,100 cases and collecting over $11 million in support last federal fiscal year. And whereas the Central Sierra Child Support Agency declares its commitment to having a meaningful impact on the families it serves. And whereas the Central Sierra Child Support Agency is engaged in educating its customers regarding their cases and the community regarding the services it provides. And whereas the Central Sierra Child Support Agency affirms the important role it plays in partnering with parents to support the well-being of children. And whereas the Central Sierra Child Support Agency encourages parents to be accountable for their children, providing them many opportunities to succeed. And whereas Child Support Awareness Month recognizes and acknowledges parents who work diligently to support their children to provide both emotional and stable financial stability, thus having a positive impact on their children. And whereas the Central Sierra Child Support Agency thanks its partner agencies and recognizes its child support professionals who strive to continuously improve their customer service and make a difference in the lives of the children in our community.
Thank you. I'm going to ask for a public comment real quick. Seeing none, Supervisor Gray.
Yeah, just a couple of comments, and I think Supervisor Campbell's going to make the motion. But the job you do is so important, and I want you to carry back to staff the appreciation that I have and this board has for the job you do. Without that service, there would be so many things that could happen to these children, and I just can't say how important it is of what you do. The other thing, I've only been on at this time for the last couple of years, and there's been just great improvement in the communications and the way that you guys do your job, and I certainly appreciate that. One thing I want to ask you to do is let the people know how they can get a hold of you and where you're located.
Thank you for those comments. We could be reached easily on our website, www.centralsierrachildsupportagency.com. On that website, you'll find an 800 number and all of our locations, which are in each of the 4 counties. We have locations, one right here in Tuolumne County. That's the easiest way to reach us.
Thank you.
Supervisor Brennan.
And I'll be very brief. I just agree with Supervisor Gray's comments. And please, I want to apologize because this item is worthy of a lot more time. And it's so important to our county and the effectiveness of these JPAs and how much work gets done. So thank your staff, and please, if there's an opportunity to come back when our agenda is not so full, I think it would be wonderful for the public to really hear the breadth of work that you're doing in more detail.
We'd be honored to do so. Thank you.
Yeah, please get on our agenda in the future.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I agree. It's been really eye-opening to see and get a better understanding of the work that you do, and to see that it's not punitive. You truly are working with families and children. You're working with the entire family to make sure that children are provided for and supported. And it's really a resource in our community. So I really hope people that might need your services reach out. And, yeah, so thank you.
So I'll just make my comments and then I'll ask for a motion. But virtually everything we do in county government ultimately comes back to our kids. They're our future. They're the future of our society. And the fact that we've got an organization like yours that's leading the way and making sure that there's a path to a constructive adulthood for our kids is very, very, very important. I'd say vital. Okay. So please do pass on our deepest appreciation to all your staff for what they do. And if there's any additional ways that we can be a better enabler for that, please let us know. And do come back. I don't want to take away from the kids. That's the important thing. But if you can just put together a little awareness presentation for our public so that they know you're out there and maybe you'll reach even yet more kids.
We'll do that and schedule that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Supervisor Campbell, will you?
Yeah, Chairman Rodefer, I move that we pass a resolution proclaiming August 2019 as Child Support Awareness Month in Tuolumne County.
Second.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? It's 5-0. Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much for your time. Okay, would you please read item number 14?
This is consideration of rejecting all bids for the Tuolumne County Road Striping 2019-2020, authorizing staff to revise the invitation to bids and issue a call for bids.
Okay, this item, just for the public's information that was not previously aware, is a reconsideration from our last board meeting at my request. So go ahead, staff.
Deputy County Counsel Carlin Driftall, at your last meeting, there was board consensus to table the striping contract to today's meeting. Staff recommendation was to reject all bids and authorize staff to revise the invitation for bids, the IFB. As we explained during your board's discussion, there were procedural defects in the original striping IFB. This defect is not a minor irregularity, as it is a mandate of the Public Contract Code to require listing of any subcontractors. Mr. K, representing the apparent low bidder Traffic Limited, requested your board consider this procedural defect a waivable minor irregularity and award the contract. In tabling the item, your board directed Mr. K provide a legal opinion to County Counsel's office outlining his argument. On August 12th, Mr. K delivered a letter with his argument, but no legal opinion was provided. The letter is included in your board packet. After reviewing the letter, our original opinion and recommendation still stands. There is a risk to the county if your board wishes to award the contract. There is a bid protest on this contract in addition to the identified legal deficiency in the IFB. The second low bidder, Central Striping Service, Inc., submitted a protest of Traffic Limited's capabilities to perform work under the alternate bid. This means there is an interested party challenging your ability to award this contract to Traffic Limited. A successful court challenge could require your board to void the contract and or pay the litigant their bid preparation costs. So staff's recommendation remains to reject all bids and authorize staff to issue the revised IFB, which is attached to your packet.
Okay, is there any public comment? Okay, to lead off with the board comment, I am satisfied that we really don't have a choice to void the bid and reissue it. I am concerned, and I want the people and the staff that had a hand in the error to understand that this may actually cost someone the award of the contract. And that's business, that's money in his pocket, and I find that very unfortunate. So we need to be a little bit more diligent as we go forward on how we do our work on these kinds of things. So please take that back to the staff. I'm not angry or upset or anything, but it's just very unfortunate for this individual. And I think we can preclude those kinds of things in the future if we're a little bit more diligent. And so with that, I'll ask, I already did public comment. Any other board comment?
I'll just kind of agree with you that, it's good to take the contractor's needs into consideration, but, having dealt with these types of contracts in the past, I know from firsthand experience that if you don't cross every T and dot every I, someone's going to challenge it. And so I'm glad that we're coming back to this and doing it the right way, because the alternative is not good. You open yourself up to a lot of liability and challenges there. So.
Okay,
So I agree with the.
thank you. Looking for a motion on staff recommendation.
Move on staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion by Supervisor Gray, second by Supervisor Campbell. All those in favor of the staff recommendation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are now going to go into closed session. So will the clerk of the board read our closed session items?
So the closed sessions are Conference of Labor Negotiators, Tracy Riggs, Eric Earhart, Debbie Batista, Ann Fremd, Kim Phipps, Authority Government Code Section 54957.6, all bargaining units. Conference with Real Property Negotiators, Authority Government Code Section 54956.8. The property is APN 007170014. Agency Negotiators, Daniel Richardson, Eric Aiken, Eric Earhart, and the other party negotiators, Kim Carpenter. Under negotiations is price and terms of payment. The other closed session is conference with the legal counsel, anticipated litigation, Authority Government Code Section 54956.9D2, and it's 2 cases.
Okay. Again, I apologize for all of you that are here for the budget discussions, but some of these closed session items actually pertain to the budget discussions, and we need to have them before we can have the budget discussion itself. So we do anticipate being gone for about 45 minutes to an hour to address these closed session items. Again, my apologies, but we are going to adjourn into closed session at this time.
Public comment.
Pardon
We
me?
need public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there public comment? I always forget that. We're not adjourned yet. Is there public comment on the closed session items? Seeing none, now we're adjourned into closed session. Thank you. We're back in session from our closed session. We have nothing to report. Is that correct? Nothing to report. So I have had a request, and I'm gonna have first of all, I'm gonna have the clerk of the board read our 9 o'clock appointment.
This is consideration of providing staff direction on the fiscal year 2019-2020 Tuolumne County budget and approve related layoffs.
Okay, because of the delay with the closed sessions, I have had a request that we allow some public comment for people that absolutely have to leave. But prior to, this is going to be a somewhat lengthy discussion. So I'm going to honor that request. You all came to talk about this. So I would like to limit it to people that really do have to leave and have to get back to work or some semi-official function, if you will. So anyone that meets those criteria, if I will open it up to public comment at this time on the budget. Otherwise, I will have public comment on chunks of the budget as we go through. We're not going to wait until the bitter end. So as we cover one functional area, we'll have some public comment. Okay? So public comment at this time for those that need to leave.
I'm Dr. Wes Whitman, and I appreciate your consideration for letting me speak earlier. Today, I'm here to speak in support of animal control and their budget, and to really address, I think, to the Board of Supervisors, all the functions that animal control does. I've been involved with animal control for 37 years now in Tuolumne County. We've seen it go from a chain linked in kennel behind Sonora out by the sewer ponds to the facility that it is today. And I've been happy to be a part of that over that 37 years. As you know, the Humane Society that I was a member of the board of for 17 years, we did a cooperative arrangement where we were able to build the new facility in Jamestown. At the time, we were able to save the county a lot of money in building the facility and doing a lease back because we could build things at non-prevailing wage. So it's because of that, the investment of the Humane Society, that we have animal control where it is now in Jamestown. Some of the things I guess I really wanted to talk to you about today is just what all, a little bit about the history of animal control, how it's evolved, and what functions they provide to the county, because I don't know that everybody is aware of what they do. And I'll try to speak quickly. Early on with animal control, we did, back with Bob Coyne, we were able to involve a veterinary professional. At that time, it was Jennifer Clark, an RVT. Bob and I were really happy to get a veterinary professional involved in the caretaking of the animals, and that's continued as Jennifer became director of animal control. And today we have Christina McEwen, who will be finishing her RVT, involved there. So if we look at budget cuts, that would be something we definitely would not want to cut. What does animal control do for the county? A lot. One of the things that I'm involved with is rabies testing in the county. I've done that for 37 years through my office. It's animal control that actually brings in the rabid animals that I have to pull the brain out of. It's also animal control that then has to come and take the tissue specimen all the way to Stockton. So, some of their time is used in public safety. As you know, we've had a huge rabies epidemic. That's continuing this year, I can tell you for sure. We had 21 positives last year. We're way and above that. We just did a raccoon last night. So, it is an epidemic for the county. Animal control is the one that's facilitating that. I'm sorry, you're...
Can you
speed it up?
Expedite your comments, please? I'm going to put a 3-minute time limit
Okay.
on public comment. So.
The other thing that animal control does with the officers is investigation. I've been involved with that for 37 years. We have a great partnership here in the county with the district attorney's office in that we do prosecute these things. And remember, that's an ongoing thing. We just recently had a horse abuse case. We've had animals in Jamestown drugged behind cars. Again, it's animal control that's doing the investigation and the backup of our district attorney that provides that. We also are adopting out a number of animals. I've been happy to be involved with FOAC, Sonora Cat Rescue, Northside Pet Connection. They all are helping in adopting animals out and reducing the number of animals put down. The thing is, it takes a viable animal control to do that. The other thing I'd like to say is we've, with animal control, with Mike and Christina, we've implemented a test program in my hospital in Groveland recently at Mona Way of selling dog licenses. The thought being, if we make it convenient for people to license their dogs, people will do the right thing, and when my staff explains it's helping animal control, that works. The point I'm trying to make here is this is a test program that's going over well, that's generating revenue for animal control.
Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up your comments, okay? I'll give you about 30 more seconds.
So I'd like to see that program expanded, but some of the problem that we're having is not having a person at Animal Control to do the data input so that we can expand the program to other veterinary hospitals.
Okay, I got it.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carl, very much.
Absolutely. Sorry to cut you off. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Chairman Rotifer, members of the board. I'm one of the people that has to get back to work. I'm going to stay as long as I can. I appreciate you letting me come and talk now. I'm Eric Hovater. I'm the Assistant District Attorney here in Tuolumne County, and I'm here really on behalf of District Attorney Laura Krieg. I've worked in this office just a few months shy of 20 years now, and in that 20 years, I've seen the workload increase in our office significantly. Number of cases, changes of law, and during the time since I came on as a baby DA, the staffing has not increased. So even though our workload has increased, the citizens deserve and expect the same quality of service, but the amount of workload and the staffing we have is making levels unsustainable. Ms. Krieg and I are in the office frequently after hours and on weekends, and we have deputy DAs who are there well past the 5 o'clock hour and into the weekends. The current load that we have, because we're, hopefully that's not my 3 minutes.
No.
Okay. Hopefully, or what I should say is we've been down an attorney for months now, and the workload of our deputy DAs at the current level is extraordinary and unsustainable. And at this point, we're looking at not getting the one attorney that we need to be fully staffed. And if we can't get that attorney, the district attorney is going to be forced to make some very difficult decisions. And the decisions that are first and foremost is to stop doing child dependency cases. And as Ms. Krieg talked about, and Chairman Rotifer, you mentioned this morning very accurately that our priority is our future and our children. And those child dependency cases are an incredible service to our community. And we have deputies who are working on behalf of these children where nobody else can do the kind of work they're doing, but they're very time-consuming cases. And if we give them up, and they generate revenue for the county, $63,000 this year, and if we give those cases up, there's no guarantee we're going to get those cases back. If they find another agency to take care of that, that's going to be revenue lost to the county. We're going to have to look at pulling back on filing a lot of juvenile cases unless they're serious cases, and that's going to have an effect because there's going to be fewer juveniles in the detention facility. And finally, we're going to have to look at scaling back the prison cases that we file, and that too is an income source, a revenue for the county. This year it was $131,000, and there's going to be a dual impact there. There's going to be a loss of revenue to the county. It's also going to be a reduction in the workload and billing by the public defender's office, which is going to be revenue loss there. The board has heard comments last week from concerned citizens about what we do.
Can you wrap it up, please?
Sure. And you've heard from Judge Segerstrom about the work that we do. It's important work. We have a very dedicated deputy DAs who go far and above the call of duty, but the workload right now is unsustainable. And I see in the board that they're talking about bringing in part of the general fund to cover an attorney, but what I see on there is that's not for another 16 months. We need that attorney now. The workload we have is just unsustainable. I'm begging the board.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Again, if you absolutely have to leave, otherwise we will have public comment at each of the items. Go ahead, ma'am.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the board. I'm Suzanne Greenwood. I'm with Infant Child Enrichment Services and the local Child Care Planning Council. As you know, we support and work very closely with many different programs in the county that are about early childhood education. We are here today, first of all, to acknowledge and thank you for the difficult decisions that you have to make. I really mean that. I know I grew up in a family of civil service, and I know that there are a lot of hard decisions you have to make, take into account every program that is worthwhile. and we all have our different ones that we support. And I'm here today just to ask you to consider the unique niche that Tiny Tots holds in our community. 60 children every week participate in those morning programs. They're very enriching. Again, as you've heard, I know from multiple times from either I come up here or other times, those first 4 to 5 years of life are the most critical learning times. And the Tiny Tots program is very fortunate to have 3 exceptional teachers who continuously build their own professional development. They don't have to do that. They choose to do that so that they can bring back what they learn into the classroom and enrich the learning of those young children. And I just want you to know that we really encourage you to continue to support that program. And thank you again for all that you do for our community.
Thank you for your comments.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Mark Spurrier. I've been a coach or a player at Santa Park for the 19 years that I've been here since I moved here. My issue is going to be just I want to make a statement for the children and for the special needs, Special Olympics that are out there, not necessarily adult softball, but the children for soccer and the Special Olympics that are out there. The possible price increase or hike on those fields from possibly, say, $15 an hour now to possibly $50. That's pretty extreme, and you guys made a great point earlier when that young lady from the Child Services spoke how important our children are to our community. If those prices increase and they go to that level, you're going to run soccer, you're going to run youth out of here. My other aspect is when I've worked for the rec department about 10 years ago. I ran a mobile youth center that has been shut down for the last 10 years. I still have parents come up to me to this day regretting the fact that place was shut down. I went to 5 different places. I wasn't in one set city or set town. I would go to Don Pedro. I would go to Crystal Falls, Willow Springs. I know for a fact I work for Social Security as well. I've seen at least 10 of those kids that came to my program when that program was stopped that had mental disabilities that I had a good rapport with that are now homeless or now mentally ill and have issues on their own that can't support themselves, that have been kicked out of their homes. I had a good rapport with a lot of those kids. You took that away from them. The county took that away because of budget cuts, and it affects kids. I know 10 years, maybe 10 kids isn't a big deal, but same kind of thing with youth sports. If you keep pushing those numbers up and the kids can't afford to do that, what else are they going to do? So you have 1,000 kids right now for youth soccer that are out there on a Saturday, and if you increase those prices up to that amount, it's not going to work. I also have my own business that I have a fundraiser for the last 9 years. I've done a softball fundraiser out there in the fall. I get 22 teams out there on a Sunday during football season. We make money out of that. It generates money for a fundraiser for the business that I own. There's also churches that put on things out there for events. There's cancer fundraisers that go out there. If you raise these fees to what you were expecting to raise these fees to for softball or for a Standard Park in general, all that goes away. The only thing you have out there is going to be the softball leagues, and that's not enough to support it. So if the fact is that you're still going to raise these fees to what they are and take this away from the children or the Special Olympics or the public in general who's trying to raise money for fundraisers, you might as well just sell the property now to the casino because they've been trying to buy it for a while anyway and just be done with it, because I think they'll take care of our youth if we're not going to. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to cut off public comment at this time, and I'm going to go ahead and ask our staff to make their presentation.
All right, thank you. Good morning. Tracy Riggs, County Administrator's Office, and with me is Assistant County Administrator Eric Earhart. So first of all, we want to start off with, we're thankful for the opportunity to change the way that we're doing our budget process. And the goal for the board and for myself was really to be able to include and have a more inclusive process and transparent as we work through how we put the budget together and where those priorities and how those priorities are developed. So my hope is as we go through this that it will be used for positive and not for negative. I really want everyone to be able to ask their questions and get them answered. And ultimately, it's your board's responsibility, and it's a big responsibility, and where do we put these resources? Furthermore, this process, as you've listened to people in these last, we've had a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls, some comments. This is not an easy process. Anytime you have to look at making reductions, it's never easy. And weighing those priorities is never easy. So there are some recommendations in this presentation that we are asking you to consider. We have tried to balance the needs across the board, but there are reductions. There is no other money that we have to balance this budget, and we have to have a balanced budget. So we've had a great team, department heads and their staff, and in our office, our auditor, controller, we've all been huddled together working on this. And then further, I want to I know there was some frustration that this presentation wasn't available before this morning. We were working on this in our office last night till 9 just to try and do some more fine tuning. One other comment before we start. This is not the end all for the budget. Today, we're asking for board direction. We will ask for some decisions, but this isn't where you approve the final budget. We will do that actually on September 17th, where we come in with a public hearing, and you will see the final presentation with everything that you've directed us to do. And with that being said, we'll get started. So we start out always when we talk about what is the mission statement for the board, and your board adopted this several years ago, but really looking at trying to create a healthy and safe communities, looking at our natural, cultural, and financial resources and being good stewards of that, and economic prosperity, and then quality of life. And quality of life is affected in a lot of different ways, and we know that that's most of what we're looking at today. The next one we look at is what is the responsibility of government? And so this actually comes out of the California Constitution, and not only is this a board priority for public safety, but we are actually ordered to do this through the California Constitution. Public safety comes in a lot of ways, though. It's not just a deputy. It's not just having your prosecutors. It's having your social service programs. It's having child welfare. It's having animal control. It's having libraries and rec and those quality of life that all work together to create a safe community, and that's what we're talking about today. So I wanted to go back and talk about where did we leave off in June when we did the recommended budget and we did essentially a forced balance. Where were we? What we needed to do was come up with $3.7 million for the general fund, and at that time, we were projecting a deficit of $500,000 in the fire fund. So between the two, we needed to come up with reductions in revenues and, increases in revenues and reductions in our expenses in order to arrive to that $4.2 million. As an overview, how did we get there? We got there by working with the auditor controller. She, through looking at the actuals for our general revenues, we were able to increase the general revenues by $747,000. We increased appropriations by approximately $3.3 million. And then the transfer to fire was reduced from the $500,000. We needed $74,000 less, so it was a little bit of a reduction there. I do want to talk about fund balance because our fund balance we projected when we did the recommended budget would be about $1.1 million, and working with our auditor controller, she's estimating it'll actually be about $2.3 million. And the board policy, when we look at our use of our beginning fund balance, is really to try and not use that beginning fund balance for recurring expenses. So we look at what can we do that's one time. The first thing we do is fund our contingencies. Board policy has contingencies to be set at no less than $750,000. Board policy also says that you'd like to start putting $250,000 per year away into reserves, so that's been incorporated into this budget. The other thing your board policy says is we want to pay off debt and pay down our unfunded liabilities at every opportunity. So we could pay off debt of $534,000. That actually frees up $781,000 moving forward into future years. We wouldn't have those debt payments anymore. Those two payments are the land for the Law and Justice Center, where we have our juvenile and our jail, and now the courthouse is being built there. It's also an internal loan that we had to do some work for both juvenile and the Law and Justice property that could not be incorporated into the bond. The other thing we look at is, as we discussed, is that we could pay down our unfunded liability right here. These are not what we're absolutely recommending, but these are some ideas here. We have $500,000 we could put towards unfunded liabilities. We have internal unfunded liabilities besides what we have in PERS, and that comes in the form of post-retirement medical. That is a benefit that we no longer offer, but we did offer in the past, so we have an obligation to ensure that that fund has enough money to meet those obligations. We also have a leave liability fund, and every county entity, even in private sector, you're required to have enough in your savings that you could pay off individuals' savings account, vacation in the event that they terminate. Now, with government, it's a little bit different than private sector. It's ongoing, but the goal is always to meet whatever that need might be, and we are unfunded in that area. And we use it quite a bit. So when we have retirements, when we have people who just leave on their own, terminations or layoffs, that fund is impacted. And then the other one is we could look at putting additional revenues, those fund balance into our contingencies for any other unmet or unanticipated increases as we go through the year. We'll talk more about that soon. So what's included in the budget? We talked about some of these. We have our contingencies right now in the budget are set at $750,000. We have $250,000 going to reserves. We recommending that we take $500,000. It's actually the $500,000 towards unfunded liabilities. We also incorporated paying down that debt that we discussed for those 2 loans, and also incorporates the needed jail staffing for the jail and utilities to open that jail. We're anticipating April of this next coming year, so the last quarter of this fiscal year. Some of the key assumptions here. Some of those are one of the biggest is reorganization and restructure of our Community Resources Agency, reorganization of Recreation and Library Services, elimination of the General Services Agency. This was created last fiscal year in order to move departments that we have, our office has typically managed. We took it and eliminated an employee in our office, and we created that General Services Director. Even though I still think that's the right direction to go, right now we are recommending elimination of that department. And a new fee structure for recreation services. Some other key assumptions, we have one-time revenue that is in here from AB 109. They had some growth funds. I have asked the committee that they would consider funding 3 months of the jail deputies, 4 months for jail deputies for that transition to the new jail. And they will be meeting fairly soon, but it's $109,000 that has been added to the budget for one-time revenues from the AB 109 trust fund. Also has freezing 6 public safety positions, and you'll see some of that a little bit later. And then with our contract with CAL FIRE, we always look at our estimated cost. There's a gross contract amount, and then there's an amount that we actually end up paying. There's a lot of different conditions in there. This is standard practice, but it's always something we have to watch in the event that we actually need more of those services than what we anticipated. So next, what we're going to do is go through some of the departments that we had some of the biggest changes in, and how they're affected, and address some of the concerns that we've been hearing within the community. So the first one is the Board of Supervisors. There's not a lot of room in the board budget. It's mostly salaries and benefits. There are a little bit, and in listening to our community talk about the way that we do our board workshops, we will change those. Those will be brought in-house, meaning we'll use a county facility. We will not be renting or use of a building. And we will also only have 1 day with the facilitator. In the past, we used to have 2 to 3 days, so we are reducing that. And then we have in our travel and training for board members, we have had a couple of board members who have said what they'd like to do as a give back is they will pay for their own travel and training related to some of the conferences that they attend. That is right now estimated about $13,000 savings overall for the cost center for these changes. Do want to note that the board budget for 19-20 is less than the fiscal year 18-19 actuals. Then we have the County Administrative Office. Our office, as we just discussed, if we eliminate the General Services Agency Director and we don't pull that position back into the office, then we have to take on the oversight of those departments with the staff that we have right now. What that means, Jeff?
So in essence, from before to now to then, you're losing a deputy director position in your office.
Right. This means we've lost a very key position, a deputy county administrator with many years of service if we go down this route.
Thank you.
The impact to our office is increased workload, which could at times force us to really focus on only the highest priorities and not be able to do those items that are of lowest priority. And that's always up to interpretation, but our office is the staff for your board, so at times this could be difficult. There's no financial impact to the county administrator budget. There is a reduced cost in the General Services Agency and overall savings in the general fund. And our budget is less, for the 19-20 budget, is less than the actuals for 18-19. And in our auditor controller, she's actually, with the elimination of general services, the auditor controller will take on the purchasing department. And she also reduced in her budget services and supplies by $31,000. And overall, again, there's some savings in her office, but she would be taking on some of the duties that right now are overseen and managed by the General Services Agency. In our county council budget, last year, your board had approved for county council office to have an attorney assistant. This position could help in a lot of ways, doing some of the work that would allow, I don't like to say lower level work, more the administrative and research and clerical duties. This will push that work back onto our attorneys, which will just reduce the amount of time they have to work on other special projects. The annual savings for this is $50,000, recognizing that part of this we already recognized in the June budget because it was vacant at that time. And the county council budget is less than the 18-19 actuals. Employee development and promotion. We've been talking about this a lot, about how do we develop and invest in our employees. So what we did was we created, it's not really a department, it's a cost center. There's no bodies associated with this. What we are doing is taking from all of the other budgets in the general fund that had reimbursement for formal education. All of that will reside in this cost center, which will help allow us to track it better. Who is it that's using it? How much are we using? When are we using it? And what are the types of programs that people are going to? In facilities management, we are not recommending any reductions to facilities management. Your board already knows the impact that our facility department has. They have a backlog, over 500 work orders. It seems like on a daily basis, they just continue to work on. And then, of course, in the summer, we have the impact for all of our HVAC systems that go down. And so in the middle of those 500 work orders, they're responding to what arises during the day. What we are recommending is that the staff services analyst your board approved, I think it was last year. We had it in facilities when we created general services. We moved that staff analyst over there. Now, with the elimination of the general services agency, we are requesting that we would keep that position but move it back to facilities. And with the note that facilities does not have any other clerical duty. Someone who does clerical, administrative, contracts, accounting, this is the only position that would do that for them. While there's a savings in general services, there's an increase in facilities for that position. One of the things that we will ask your board to consider, and we're not asking for a decision today, but there is another option when we look at our contract that is currently, it's expired with Tuolumne Parks and Rec District in Tuolumne City. What we could do, and again, this is up for your consideration, not asking for a decision, is we right now pay about $109,000 per year for that contract, and they maintain the ball field, the park, and Memorial Hall. Our other employees do help at times, but what we are saying, another option for this is that we could hire actually a full-time groundskeeper and a full-time maintenance worker, and then it would give overall capacity to our facilities management department. So it's a consideration. We'll come back later when we are talking about renegotiating that contract with both options for your board to decide on. If we were to go down that road, it would actually cost $14,000, but you would gain capacity with those two additional workers.
So is that going to be included is a decision on that going to be included in the budget, or is it going to be outside the budget process?
We'll do it separately. The amount for that contract is currently in the budget, so we wouldn't be losing it at all as a placeholder, and we would come back outside of that so we can really talk about it and explore which really is the best option. General Services Agency. We created this agency when I first became the county administrator. I really believe in that this is the right direction that we need to go. I don't think our office, you guys know this, but I don't think our office should manage departments. We are not good department heads. It's hard to be an advocate and to really be engaged in a department when you're also running and working at the county level that we do. They don't get sufficient resources from us. When we did do this, I recommended creating a general services agency. We also, at that time, the way we did it was we eliminated a deputy county administrator and created this new director. We had two deputy county administrators who interviewed for that position. One of them was selected, and he's been serving in that capacity since then. The unfortunate part of this is we can't afford it. We need to look at at redoing this model, bringing these departments back into the county administrator's office. Unfortunately, what that means is the elimination of this department means the elimination of the General Services Agency Director and that Staff Services Analyst, which is vacant. We're asking that we would reallocate that position over to Facilities Management. Operational impact means that facilities, veterans, recreation, and airports, as well as purchasing, but that's not coming into our office, that would be overseen by the County Administrator's Office.
And library.
Yeah, I'm sorry, library as well, sorry, it's on there. The net savings for this fiscal year would be approximately $274,000, and for ongoing, it's about $300,000 going forward. Okay, District Attorney. In this, we do have the vacant district attorney. We often have a vacancy in our public safety departments, and this is one of the departments we always budget for a vacancy factor because they often have vacancies in there throughout the year. This has been vacant all year, and as you heard, this does have an impact on their ability to prosecute cases. At this point, we have that position frozen, and we have not allowed that to be hired. So right now, it is frozen in the budget system. We'll have more conversation about our public safety positions a little bit later on. The increase, obviously, operational impact is the increased workload, and the savings for this fiscal year, if we did not fill that position, would be approximately $97,000. And Supervisor Rodefer, if there's any time you want me to stop for questions for department heads, I know they're here, so just let me know. Our sheriff.
Well, since you brought that up, I'm going to rely on you where you think there's a good break, and I'm assuming since you brought it up that you think this is a good time for a break. So I'm going to ask for public comment on those items that Tracy has asked for at this point. And again, you're on a 3-minute time limit, please.
Thank you. Daniel Richardson, your deputy, used to be Deputy County Administrator, but now the General Services Agency Director. So today we've heard the recommendation from the County Administrator to eliminate the General Services Director position from this budget. 8 months ago, as we heard, the County Administrator recommended to create the General Services Agency in an effort to move supervision of these departments out of the County Administrator's office because this same office, where I worked for over 20 years, should focus its time and resources on serving the Board of Supervisors rather than directly supervising departments. And yet today's recommendation is to do the opposite, move most of the GSA departments back under the County Administrator's office. In addition to supervising these 6 departments, airport, facilities, management, library, purchasing, recreation, and veterans services, I'm in various stages of selling 9 pieces of county property. For example, tomorrow our board chair will sign final escrow documents to sell a piece of county property for just over $290,000. I've negotiated millions of dollars of county leases for buildings that we use. I review all department requests for proposals. I coordinate copier, printing, and cell phone contracts. My length of service to the county has given me an immense depth of knowledge and expertise. The recommendation to eliminate my position eliminates the value to the county of this knowledge and expertise, which has taken many years to acquire. By eliminating my position, the board will be left with less seasoned advice. My position touches county activities that directly impact county residents who judge the way the county is run by how those activities are managed. These include recreation, library, and veteran services. Thus, the image of this honorable board is created and maintained by the county functions I supervise. I know how they work. I know the people that work for them. I have a sense of what needs to improve and what is working well. I understand the salary you pay me is a tempting target in times of fiscal shortfalls, but that salary reflects years of county service that carries with it great value to this board and the county you supervise. You need me. That knowledge is not replaceable. I accepted the position last year because I knew I could assist you in the management of essential county functions. That desire has not changed. The board should look elsewhere for a budget solution. Eliminating expertise that is important to the board is not the answer. I do not think it is prudent to eliminate the GSA department or my position. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other Yes, sir. Come on up.
Good morning. My name's Cliff Marchetti. I'm a Tuolumne resident and also the newest member to the Tuolumne Parks and Recreation Board. Today, I'm not speaking for the board. In reviewing your options for maintenance of the parks in Tuolumne, there's a suggestion that you could eliminate the contract, which is $100,000, and then hire a groundskeeper and a new facilities worker to replace that $100,000 contract. The reality is, it's not going to work. You're going to be spending money and PERS and benefits on a new worker to go to Tuolumne. It requires at least an FTE or more to do the work that the district's already doing at a lesser cost per person. Not only do we do that, but we also provide some of our own funding to continue the maintenance of those parks on the county's behalf. We work with you, for you, to make sure there's eyes on those facilities 7 days a week, that all the trash, all the leaves, everything's picked up constantly. If you think you can get a better deal, think of it as a subcontract. You're contracting out with us to do that work at a lesser cost than the county can actually do it. And I think we do a good job. I think the staff does a great job at doing that. And it's my position that by eliminating that contract, you'll get a poor level of service, you're going to compromise some level of safety, and possibly affect maintenance because we're in those facilities every day. We have identified leaks in buildings and fixed water leaks in the parks, and it's important that that stuff be done every day. You're not going to get that from sending somebody up there from Sonora once a week or twice a week. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, I've been coming to these meetings since 2009, so I think I have a lot of historical knowledge too. So I was here 8 months ago when you agreed to start the GSA department. So I understand what you're saying, but these people finally got support for a long time. So I have an issue with eliminating that department and eliminating a person with that much historical knowledge, because Daniel is usually my go-to person, and he can answer a lot of questions about a lot of different departments. I do agree with stopping going to outside facilities for your board workshop, because Rush Creek I thought was a little hard for most people to go to, and sometimes I thought you did it deliberately so I wouldn't come. But whatever.
No way.
Offered you a ride.
No way.
So I'm okay with cutting back on some of that, but and I guess I could agree with some of the cost centers and stuff. And I see how facilities management can't manage what they have already, because a lot of it's old, a lot of it's falling apart. And once again, I will raise my issue on why we have so much grass. Grass is very expensive. It takes a lot of maintenance. Somebody needs to be out there once or twice a week. And maybe we need to learn at more natural growing plants other than planting all this grass that we need all these groundskeepers for. And I see how hard the district attorney's office works, because I frequently go to court, especially if there's a mental health case. And there's a lot of time wasted in the court that it costs me a lot of money for people sitting around. So I suggest we look at some of that. But they work really hard too. So I understand your position, but some of it I don't understand. Thank you.
Okay, any other public comment on this portion? CAO Riggs, press on.
All right, so next we move to the sheriff's office. I have to say that whenever we have an issue that related to budget or anything else, Sheriff Pooley is always right there to say, how can I help? And I just want to say thank you to Bill for that. He stepped up here at a great expense to him to make some of these offer some of this up. and it was not easy for him, and it would make a huge impact on his services if we were to implement these. So at this point, the recommendation has 3 vacant deputy positions. The recommendation from our office is that we would freeze those positions. They have been, some of them have been vacant for a couple of months for various reasons. Reclassify a sheriff sergeant, which is vacant, to a deputy, and then a sheriff corporal, which is also vacant, to a deputy, meaning he would lose some depth within the organization by doing this. The operational impact for this would obviously be a reduction in his ability to respond to calls. We already at this time have some issues with that. Your board knows that. The annual savings, if we were to implement this, is $491,000. The reason it's only $487,000 going forward is that those deputies who will be vacating those positions were paid at a much higher rate than the ones that you would bring in. So that's why they had some tenure there, some certifications that they receive, incentives for in their pay, and so it changes a bit when you bring in new employees. County jail. As everyone knows, we're building a new jail. And what this new jail will allow for our justice partners is to actually start implementing and having some teeth for those who disregard when, for example, if a judge orders community service and the individual just doesn't do it, which from what I am hearing when I talk with our justice partners, this happens quite often. There is no option to say, go spend 10 days or 2 weeks in jail because there's no room. There's no teeth for the jail for any of that type of stuff. Or for probation, who might see someone who violates their parole or probation, and they could do what's called flash incarceration. They don't have to go through the courts. They could go directly to the jail, and that person could spend some time in the jail. We can't do that right now either because we don't have capacity. So this new jail, not only is it it's not a great environment for our employees, we need to change that. So we have the new jail we're expecting that we will be able to occupy hopefully in March or April of this fiscal year. With that being said, the way that it's configured, we would need 5 new jail deputies, and then we would need 4 jail clerks. The 5 jail deputies I have in the system right now as of March 1st, the clerks as of April 1st, and we also have increased the cost for utilities for this cost center as well. Remember that for the sheriff's deputies, I have asked the AB 109 committee to cover that cost, a one-time increase for the budget just for this transition, and then we will implement the full cost for next year. The increase would be, it's $188,000 for the expense, knowing that there's $109,000 in revenue coming in for this fiscal year. And for next year, for the staffing, it would be approximately $626,000 that we would carry forward. Do you want me to stop on Sheriff or wherever?
Sure. Let's do public comment on the Sheriff's Department, including the jail. Okay.
All right. So now we'll move to probation. Many of the types of all the supervision that gets directed from the courts is handed down to our probation department. So they have both juvenile and adult services going there. With probation, the recommendation at this point is they have a vacant deputy probation officer. It's been frozen. It's right now we recommend that it stay frozen, and there's some more options for your board on all of these at the end. Also to eliminate a legal assistant. The operational impact on this would be a reduced ability to provide services in a timely manner, and there could be times in which maybe a judge would order certain services, even though they may not be mandated, they can order those, and what I have told our chief probation officer is that we will work with her and the courts if that were to happen. The fiscal impact here, if we were to do both of these items, would save $137,000 out of the budget this year, and going forward, it's $142,000. The Regional Juvenile Center, I want to just spend a few minutes talking about this. Our Regional Juvenile Center, we know, is the cost right now is about 1.2 or 1.3 million. Just want to recognize that about $500,000 of that, if we did not have the Juvenile Center, would go back to probation. But more importantly, your board and staff, both the chief probation officer and our office, are actively engaged in looking at other options for this, either reducing the cost, changing the services, and even closure if that's what has to happen. Unfortunately, there is a process that we have to go through, as there is with any type of governmental service. We have an obligation under the bonds that we accepted that we would go through that process. The Board of Community Corrections, they have to approve any changes. They also have to approve if we want to close it. So not only are we working with the Board of Community Corrections, we're also working with our state CSAC and RCRC. Supervisor Brennan was just there at a meeting, and they have a survey that's going out. So we're looking at regional opportunities. We're looking at different ways that we would fund those. So there's a lot of work going on, but this will take time, and we are doing our best to actively engage in that. And it looks like Supervisor Brennan.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that real briefly, because we have been pursuing this at a state level, and we're exploring ideas like repurposing and what opportunities are out there. And you'll hear some conversations, some counties have had some capacity to do that, but it really gets at, I'm going to call it the color of the money, how those facilities were funded. And so at a state level, RCRC is actively engaged in trying to help us find a way, and there is acknowledgement, again, at the state level that DJJ, the Department of Juvenile Justice, is really looking at, it's going to be another one of those scenarios where they are going to pass down to counties an expectation that you will provide services for higher level offenders. And they are going to push those costs down to counties. And so this is going to be an ongoing conversation, but I just want the public to understand how engaged we are, because the changes are going to come from legislation at the state level. And there are, going to say, probably 8 rural counties that are going to be heavily impacted by the decisions that are going to be made.
And also, there's discussions on how counties like Tuolumne that have a center are reimbursed for costs by counties that use our juvenile center that don't have their own, and how we might regionalize those costs so everybody bears a fair share of the burden. Right now, that's not happening. So there's a lot of discussions behind the scenes, both at RCRC and CSAC, on how, and directly with the state government agencies, on how we go forward and make it a viable solution for the state as a whole. So.
Okay, and with that being said, I also want to recognize that our Chief Downey has done an incredible job, her and her staff, and Mike Arndt, who is our superintendent. They're recognized at the state level for the quality of their programs. So I just want to make sure that our employees and our department head recognize that this is no reflection of the quality of service that they are providing, because we know it's at the highest form of excellence in that department, and what they're offering to their juveniles that are in there. We also have the group is getting bigger, but T.Y. Atkins has been here a few times. They have a group that goes in and volunteers, and they've done incredible work with the youth in there as well. So while we're looking at that, we recognize that the cost is huge, and we are actively engaged in trying to find other ways to reduce those costs. So with that being said, we'll move into what the recommendation is for the budget at this time. So we will have a long-term employee who is expected to retire on April 1st. What the chief is asking that we would do is reorganize the department in a little bit that's makes a lot of sense. So first of all, you would eliminate the superintendent at the juvenile hall as of April 1st. And what we would do is eliminate that position and then create a supervising juvenile correction officer. We'd have 2 supervisors within the juvenile hall. Then we would have 2 division managers. One would do adult and one would do juvenile services. And so that's the reorganization that's been built into this budget. And we would be asking your board to recognize that. There is an increased cost there of $13,522. We will have to work with the chief on how that corresponds between the 2 cost centers. But right now, overall, the increase to the general fund would be almost $14,000 for that change in the organizational structure. Okay, so the next one is Community Resources Agency. This is by far, you want to do?
Yeah, let's go
Okay.
and talk about any public comment on the probation department, including the juvenile hall.
I'm just not sure why we would need 2 supervising probation officers for the juveniles with the low numbers. Why wouldn't we only just need 1?
You want to answer that?
I can answer that, or the chief
No,
can
go
come
ahead.
up. So what we have to have because of the rotation, if you have 2 exempt people, they're able to work and be more flexible. If we only have 1, then you have to pull in for overtime and you have to do a different type of rotation. There is, and I can't speak to the number of individuals, but there is a ratio that is required for adults to youth that has to be maintained at all times. No matter what, if we have 1 to, I think it's 15 or 16 youth in there, that ratio does not change. So
Okay. It's
having
the-
people who are exempt, there's just more flexibility. They can work beyond the 8 hours. We can have one that does weekends, one that does during the week. It just offers flexibility for her.
Okay, so they're
staff.
providing direct supervision then to the
Yes,
juveniles?
yes,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Well, we have people coming from outside the state to look at our outstanding juvenile detention center. And Mike Arndt was honored twice last year as like Man of the Year. So I want to go back to Sherry's comment because it's my understanding, you know, there was some discussion at the last meeting that it costs $500 and some per juvenile, but we're only getting paid $100. And we had to offer that $100 rate to get some of the other counties that agreed to support us in the beginning that were not. And now it's my understanding El Dorado County is charging $60, which means they're underwriting a lot of other people to come in there. So there needs to be some sort of statewide, we can't run around undercutting each other, nor should I have to be paying for juvenile delinquents from other counties. So there needs to be some sort of statewide effort.
That was the regionalization
Okay.
effort, that discussion that I was commenting on.
Okay.
We are trying to get that where partnering counties bear more of the brunt of the financial brunt of housing and providing the services. Actually, a lot of the cost isn't just housing the kids. It's providing those services that, as you clearly articulated, are exceptional services for these kids.
Can I add to that? Because
Yeah.
Carol, you are correct. Our facility has been recognized widely for doing the things that make a difference to youth and that actually have the potential, the very, very, very clear nexus to actually being able to move them out of the justice system and give them all of the wraparound services that they need to not be moving to the next step in entering the adult system. Part of this is absolutely, we have to find the mechanisms that those services cost money. And we have to find a way that if we're going to be providing those, that the funding streams follow those that are from outside of our county and are using those services. But at this point in time, as CAO Riggs said, we have the same staffing levels whether there's 1 or 16.
Right.
And so that's why counties have found themselves in this revolving cycle of, let's make a deal. And that is not that's not the right way to be doing this. And so know that we are pursuing every avenue at the state level because we understand it, and some of our partnering counties understand it. They just have some of the same budget crises that we find with PERS and some of the other pieces, and so they're taking advantage of us, and that needs to stop.
And they are. And another thing from the state, you're also required now that the state has sent their prison population down to your level, you're required to offer the same level of services that the state offers. So if you want the finest health care in California, go to prison. You know, and that's really expensive. So something needs to be done at some other level, because it concerns me as a citizen that the people benefiting most from our budget and our money are criminals. And a lot of people that aren't criminals and are trying to survive and make a living and pay taxes and do all the right things are getting screwed.
You're
Hey,
Thank you,
Carol,
thank you, Carol, for that. You're preaching to the choir.
Yeah, Carol, just
Seriously.
if you want to affect change, you got to do that to voting, because the big picture is the state doesn't want people locked up. So if you send people to the legislator's office who are going to be what our Constitution stands for, which is public safety first, then that's where you have to send the message. Because we're dealing with, I've sat in on conference calls where I've heard the state say, we're not going to take responsibility for this anymore. We're sending it down to the counties, and they're not saying the funding with it. So big picture is we're dealing with the consequences.
Yeah, we're frustrated, but we're not going to solve this in this room today. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I am Trinity Bond, and I have 2 children that are in the high school system right now. And I am seeing ridiculous numbers of kids misbehaving and doing drugs and you name it, because we keep cutting back over and over and over and over again. And I understand that it's horrible decisions to make, and I do not envy you at all. But we keep cutting back all of these programs that these kids need young to keep them from getting into these drugs, to keep them from getting into the juvenile system, and then onto the public adult system. If we don't catch these kids young, it's just going to be a revolving door and of expense. And it's a much lower, tremendously lower expense to catch them and to provide these services for these kids when they're young. And to help the more struggling adults who can't give the time that the kids need. I feel like we have a large number of adults in this county who just don't take the time for their kids. And I've been on the PTO boards since my kids were in preschool, and volunteered and volunteered and volunteered. And I'm so sick of fundraisers, but if that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do. But we have to keep it
Okay,
at a younger.
thank you. Okay, seeing no one else, Community Resources Agency.
Okay, Community Resources Agency is definitely, has the most changes than any other department in this budget proposal. So what we're looking at and recommending is that we would transition we would actually reorganize and restructure the Community Resources Agency by going back to a model that we had years ago, which was having a Public Works and then a Community Development Department. What that would mean is that we would have an elimination of our director, CRA director, and 2 assistant director positions. You would also mean elimination of the assistant department head. You would then create a community development department and a community development director, a creation of a public works department, and then a creation of that public works director. And here we also have creation of an engineering planner as well. The transition into this community development department, what we're recommending is that we would kind of shift so we can focus on the general plan and begin implementation of that general plan and what they're seeing as a different type of services that they're providing when they're looking at the land use. So what we would do is go from planning and development and change kind of some of that focus to land use and natural resources division. And again, this is to meet the future needs of the general plan. What this would require is elimination of 3 planners, a permit tech, principal plans examiner, senior environmental health specialist. Some of these positions are vacant. One of them, we do have another position that is being vacated this week or next week, and so there will be some movement within the department as a result of that. We are looking at, this is not final, but a conversion of the housing coordinator to a housing planner, and then creation of a land use coordinator, 2 land use techs, and administrative assistant. The operational impact of the Community Development Department would be to provide greater emphasis on the general plan while keeping community development a priority. The fiscal impact for doing this would be $573,000 for this fiscal year and as much as $697,000 next fiscal year going forward. Do you want to stop on that one at all before I go into the next? It's animal control.
Oh, okay, we're going from there to animal control. Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about Community Development Department. Anybody, any public comment on that?
Absolutely. This is horrifying to me. And as many of you know, I've gone to Planning Commission meetings for God knows how long. And I thought the way the Community Development Department worked before with the two different departments was a nightmare. And you undertook that and changed everything and brought in someone, David Gonzalez and Quincy and Kim. Other than my beef with solid waste and how crappy that is, I'll eliminate that from this discussion. But the rest of it has been amazing, and you all should have seen the difference that this has made. And to go back to that, well, I really disagree with that. And your community development is very important, and you went out and hired an economic development person at almost $100,000 a year, when I'm not sure that economic development is a public safety issue, even though that may be what you wanted, but he has no experience. And you're going to eliminate experienced people from doing something you're obligated to do and fund that? I have a problem with that. I'm just horrified when I see this.
So do you want to explain a little bit?
So I should have done this sooner, and I apologize, I did not. So when we look at elimination of these positions, and we are creating some positions, so the hope and what we would continue to do, and I'll say this as a blanket statement for any of our departments, is we always work with those departments to fill back into those positions. So there will be a lot of while you might eliminate some of these positions, some of the same people will come in and work in some of those new positions. And we're looking at the qualifications, the experience, and we are expecting, example, we will be interviewing for a new CDD director and public works director. Those three individuals have the opportunity to submit an application and interview for those two new department heads. The land use techs and the planners, those will be able to look at moving into those other positions. So while this looks really, really bad and it's all difficult, we are working with any of the affected employees to continue to keep them employed and move them into those other positions that they might qualify for.
And well, I'll stop there. Come on up, ma'am.
My name is Carol Curley, and I live in Twain Harte, and I've worked with city budgets and worked for museums as a museum curator, and I'd like an explanation of how you're going to save $696,000 annually by firing people and then hiring new people, creating new positions. Where does that cost differential come from? Are you paying people less money for lower qualifications and therefore saving salary and benefits? I just would like an explanation, because to me it does not make a whole lot of sense, because I have worked with cities, counties, and state budgets. So I'd like an explanation. Thank you.
I can definitely outline this. So for elimination of the super agency director, the savings right there is it's about $240,000 a year with all of the benefits that are attached to it. That's all of the employer cost attached to having that position. There is an elimination of the principal plans examiner. We have someone who is actually moving on from his position for the chief building official. That individual is expected to promote up into that other position. So we would have an elimination of the principal plans examiner, but we're not losing the individual who is currently providing that work. Their scope will change a bit with this new organizational structure. There is, we've had the vacancy of two senior two senior environmental health specialists. Those have been vacant for some time. We are recommending we keep one of those and that we would eliminate one of those. That position, fully loaded, could be anywhere from $90,000 to $130,000 a year. It depends on where they come in and what level of which they come in and their level of education. When we look at planners, we are bringing in the planners, but you also are, there's really not a loss of planners. We are not expecting the salaries to be different there. You're losing an assistant department head, which is one of the highest level of administrative support, and instead we're bringing in an administrative assistant. There is a savings there, and I don't know what that is off the top of my head. As you look at each of these, as you begin working through them, that's how the savings works within the budget. But almost half or more than a third is on losing the super department head. We have 2 of those, really, we call the super agencies. That was our CRA, then our Human Health and Human Services, in which we have the super agency director. And here we're recommending that we would pull that back apart.
Okay. Seeing no more public comment on this item, press on to animal control, I guess,
Right.
is next.
So I wanted to talk about animal control. I had my daughter had sent me a text of a snapshot that she took off of some social media. The reason I want to address this is your board has not yet made any decisions on any department at all. And what was presented to me in that text was really disturbing for me as well. And there was a belief or a misunderstanding that the board was considering that we would euthanize animals after the state minimum mandate of 3 days. Our department has never done that. We're not expecting they would do that, nor have we ever considered doing that as a recommendation to your board. What we are recommending in animal control, I've been working very closely with Kelly, and she's been working closely with Mike, is that they have a vacant animal control officer. This is another one of those public safety that we would recommend that we freeze. What she had said is her relief is what offers them the most flexibility right now. Their services would remain the same as they are right now. What that vacant animal control would do for them is that position could allow them to be actually more proactive. Right now, they're very reactive. Having that other position just allows them to get out and be out looking around and seeing what's going on. The fiscal impact for freezing this position and not getting it filled this year is about $57,000. Do you want to?
That's full annualized savings.
Yeah, we'd already recognized a little bit for the first part of the
Okay.
year in the prior, but in
Okay,
the
thank
first
you.
recommended, yeah.
Any public comment on animal control, then? The line forms on my right.
Thank you. My name is Kathleen Morse. I'm the president of the Northside Pet Connection, which gives out spay and neuter vouchers for cats and dogs throughout different regions of this community. This also includes medical vouchers. I've personally worked for the past 3 years with Christina Whitcomb in animal control to help adopt out 200 extremely tame animals, particularly cats, to the Oregon Humane Society. I've interacted with these cats. They're very affectionate. The concern we had was that there would be this mandated budget going through, and that's what we're trying to protect against. So I'm very happy to hear that that was not really a serious consideration. I just want to inform you a little bit more. Based on my personal interaction with animal control, they operate on a shoestring budget. They work incredibly hard with the rescues, several presented here and public. They work with social media and other outlets to extend all of what they can do for these animals. This is a labor of love for them, for us. It's a labor of love for their animals, for our animals, for your animals. I'm sure you have animals. I just want to reinforce, I've talked with several business owners, their staff in Sonora, Jamestown, and Groveland. I've talked with the communities in this area. We all unanimously support that animal control be supported because, as Wes Whitman said, that's really a foundational piece for us to do the greater rescue. These animals are not homeless for their own reasons. They have not been spayed and neutered by people who are not responsible. Spay and neuter is expensive. We need more community and potentially county support for spay and neuter. People abandon their animals after they've left their apartment, which is illegal, but this happens all the time. So there are a lot of highly adoptable animals out there. So as a community, and hopefully as a board, a county government, we need to find solutions so that we have fewer animals roaming the streets and less of attacks on animal control and the rest of the rescues in this room. So now and into the future, I ask this board and the future board to not lose sight of the value of compassion for both people and animals. Please maintain the current animal control budget. Tuolumne County truly loves their animals and will not accept the consequences of a mandated budget, which I'm glad to hear is not on the table, but also I ask what more we can do for animals, and definitely the youth and child services are absolutely as important as that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Joe Reba. I'm the owner and trainer at a dog training business here in Sonora, California. I've been living here for 11 years. I have several pets. Many of them, I have 5 rescue pets that, thanks to the good rescue organizations working with animal control, were able to be saved and adopted. I'm absolutely happy to hear that what was on social media is incorrect. So that's awesome. But when I sit back here and I hear that position's going to remain vacant, and that there's only going to be a reactive response to animal control as opposed to a proactive response. I was a police officer for 20 years. I know that when our budgets were cut and we got to the point of being just reactive, that creates a whole length of problems. So I would encourage not only not to cut the budget as presented here, but I think that we should have been increasing the budget over the years. So to ask when the budget should have been increased a long time ago to take this money from animal control, it's actually, a sin to me. I would hope that potentially, I don't know that this is the proper time, but that the board should be considering, I know everybody doesn't like tax increases, but I came from the Bay Area years ago, paid pretty high sales tax and so forth, and I would encourage that possibly it's the time to start looking into sales tax increase to help the sheriff's department for public safety, animal control, our issues with the fire departments up here. If we don't pay for it in one way, we'll pay for it in another. I know my insurance has gone up tremendously from about $1,500 to $5,000 for my fire insurance this year. If we don't help the fire department, the police departments, animal control, one way or the other, we're going to pay the price. So I would definitely encourage you as an animal lover to please help the animals. Thank you.
How'd you know I was an animal lover? Just to comment on the revenue side of this, okay? The California state law in many ways ties our hands on revenue increases in terms of timetable. So we're not just looking at the cut side, we're also going to be looking at the revenue side, but that has to be solved in many cases, most cases, in normal election cycles and those kinds of things. So those tools are not available to us for this year's budget. So it's not that we're ignoring them. Your comments are valid, and we will certainly be considering those as we go forward. Yes, ma'am.
So my name is Rhianna Glazier. I'm a relief worker for Tuolumne County Animal Control. I'm actually on duty right now. I just wanted to say, in response to our budget, towards the end of the fiscal year, we don't even have enough money to have our relief workers come in for more than 1 day a week. And that takes up the time of the officers, takes up the time of the full-time staff. They're not able to do their jobs. So I just wanted to make a comment on that. And then I also wanted to say, there's a saying that goes, you can tell a lot about a man and his character by the way he treats his animals. And you guys are that man, and these are your animals. So whatever decisions you make, that's going to directly impact the care of these animals. And we, the people of Tuolumne County, will remember that the next time the elections come around. So it's in your best interest. Just saying.
It's not very often that I thank someone for a threat, but I will thank you.
It's not meant to be threatening.
No,
I'm sorry.
I will thank you for your service to our county. Thank you very much for what you do.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Jennifer Pastorini. I'm in Long Barn. I'm also speaking about the animal control thing, but what I'm bringing today are solutions. And we hear a lot about the cutting and things like that, and maybe we're not to some of it yet. However, we do need to enact spay and neuter laws and backyard breeder laws and find those people. That money can go to animal control or other county services. It doesn't even matter. One of the things that we need to look at is the Visitors Bureau that gets 25% of the general fund, and they get about $900,000 a year. What do they do with that money? They run ads. They run ads for businesses that are already running ads. They run ads for the casino. They run ads for Dodge Ridge. They run ads for the forest. Forest Service already runs those ads. So why are we paying a duplicate fee tax to have something that's already being done and being taken care of by the business owners? So we could take that money and we could solve a lot of problems that I'm seeing today with the budget. So I think there's places there that we can certainly cut that aren't going to affect our well-being, our public safety, or anything like that. And then what we could also do is raise the TOT tax, because that's kind of low. It's only 10%. And then one of the cool things, I got here early and saw the bill from the Westin in Las Vegas. They also have a destination fee and a destination fee tax. Why don't we have that? We're a destination. There's more money, and I want to say it was about $32.88 per night that you paid extra. So, I mean, there's other answers out there than just cutting the budget. We need to start increasing fees that increase our budget so we have the money to spend.
I think,
Anyone? Solutions? Yeah.
again, most of those revenue options are linked to an election cycle. So we appreciate your input. We're not looking at those things, okay? We are looking at additional revenues. I don't know what that will look like, but just so everybody is comfortable, we can't do it until March or November. So, and it'll be too late to affect this year's budget. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, my name is Judith Rodan. I'm current president of Fix 'em Now. I'd like to thank the Board of Supervisors for their dedication and hard work for the citizens of Tuolumne County. We all know what a difficult task you have ahead of yourselves. Please consider the true value of the lives of the animals that your budget decisions will affect. I've been working with the less advantaged citizens of Tuolumne County for many years now. In fact, I've fixed over 8,000 of their cats. These companion animals are all the family that many of these citizens have in their lives. Their animals are their relatives, and they don't have any. They regard them as their children. Any cuts to animal services will absolutely affect their families. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. First of all, I want to thank everyone that has come and listened to this, and I want to thank all those that have made public comment and up until now, because it's possible. Never mind. I would like to thank people because it's possible that people will start filtering out, and I want you to know how much this board and our staff appreciates your comments. So I'll just say that, and we are going to, I guess, work through lunch. We don't have any appointments in the afternoon, correct? No. Okay. So we may have a late lunch. Let's go ahead and let's take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll finish up with the budget. Okay. If everyone will sit down, I kind of wish I had said this at the outset. You're going to see two different descriptors on the positions that we talk about. One is eliminate and one is freeze, okay? There's a significant difference, intellectual difference in, I think, where this board is going. When we say freeze a position, that means it stays on the books. We can hire to it. We just aren't going to let the department heads hire to it right now. So we're keeping the option open in the future as funds become available, and they often do during the year, to review those positions. We consider them to be high enough priority that we're going to do that. Eliminate a position, we can always put a position back. But that's a little bit harder administrative exercise to go through. And so those positions, and animal control is one of them, and that's why I bring it up now. You probably saw it on the sheriff's slides as well. So freeze is a big difference between that and eliminate. So just an FYI. And I guess we're up to Ag Commissioner. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Just real quick, the other difference between a freeze and elimination is that the freeze gives me authority to work with department head, and we don't come back to the board because the position still exists. When you eliminate that position, it takes board action to bring it back. So it actually comes back to another board meeting, and we go through the whole process to do that. So that's part of the difference as well. Okay, so the next one is our Ag Commissioner. Our Ag Commissioner and our staff met with the Fish and Wildlife Preservation Fund Advisory Committee, and they have committed to pay for half of the trapper, which is about $79,000 a year. So we've added that revenue in, so there is a savings of $39,000 for that cost center for half the cost of the trapper, who stays very busy in our community throughout the year, and it is public safety if you would hear some of the stories of what that individual deals with and what he responds to. Veteran Services, the only thing we're recommending here is we have had in the past a very difficult time in recruiting a veteran service officer because it's at this strange 0.48 of an FTE. What we're recommending, since we've had a veteran service representative that is vacant, is that actually we take the opportunity now and make our VSO, our veteran service officer, full-time. So what we would do is eliminate that veteran service representative, and we would increase the veteran service officer from a 0.48 to a 1.0. That does give us 2 full-time individuals within the office, as well as their clerical assistants that they have in there. And so the idea is that they're going to get more consistent service, and that VSO can be there full-time. The impact for that, this fiscal year, there's a savings of $26,000 because we've had that vacancy for a little while. Next year, it'd be an increase of $3,000 for us to take this action. All right, let's talk about library. We all know that a library in any community is essential, and it is an essential part of life, and it is what adds to our quality of life in any community. The recommendation here, and we've been working hard for every department while they're sorry, we're having issues, but I'm going to keep talking. Well, every department has given and they're providing services. What we've looked at here is how do we maintain the services? How do we keep what is happening right now at a steady status? So what we're recommending here is some will remember for 8 years we operated without a library director. About almost 2 years ago, we brought back the library director. We do have 2 key staff within our library system, and we have a librarian with a master's degree. We have also our operations supervisor, both which our operations supervisor is probably one of our longest standing employees, seniority-wise, and there's no one who knows the library system better than that individual. We also have another librarian who's working on our master's degree. She'll have it next September, and so we would actually have 2 librarians within the system. Do you want me to stop while people? Is Roger here?
I think there's enough interest. Let's hang on until we can get the slide up.
There it goes.
There we go.
Okay, we're back. I'm not sure why it did that. So back to library staffing. So the recommendation here is we would maintain services the way that they are with all of our branches. So we would maintain Twain Harte, you would maintain the Sonora branch, the Tuolumne City branch, and the Groveland branch. However, we are recommending some restructuring that would take place within the library system with its staffing. This, we would, excuse me. We would also, so elimination of the library director. We're also recommending, we've had the bookmobile services, while they are needed in some areas, we are recommending, and they have decreased their usage, we are recommending elimination of the bookmobile. The reason is we're able to bring that employee into the library system to backfill and also reduce some of the use of our relief staff. With that, we would convert, we have 2.75 FTEs. What that means in our system is when you work 0.75 or higher, you get full-time permanent benefits. But with these individuals, they don't work full-time hours. So the cost to bring them full-time is actually relatively minor, considering that they're already getting all of the cafeteria benefits already. So we are recommending to bring both of those 0.75 FTEs to 1.0. By doing the elimination of the bookmobile and converting these two individuals to full-time, we are gaining, that's about, 0.75 and a half, so 1.25 FTE back into the library system full-time. With that being said, we did reduce the relief budget also by $25,000. By converting these others, we're gaining more staff time.
What percentage of the relief budget is that 25,000?
Probably 40%.
Okay.
Real quick, and so by creating those positions and making them full-time, we could actually increase, say, for instance, 200 library hours. We have more capacity.
Possibly, we could look at that for sure. Right now, we'll look at how all of this works. You remember, by losing a library director, you're losing a full-time individual in there. So there is some loss, but there's some gain by taking these actions for sure.
Possibly more flexibility.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lord Chairman, I have a question. So if you're reducing relief by 25%, you said that's about 40% of the overall relief budget.
Yeah.
Are you actually looking at eliminating relief positions or just reducing the number of hours per position?
That would depend on those, the staff within, so we defer
So
to
you'd
the
be
two
working
individuals
with the
running
library
it.
to
But it could
decide.
be a combination.
Okay.
Right.
And then my question about the bookmobile is, what condition is the bookmobile in? Is it still functional?
Right, so last year or 2 years ago, when our new library director came in, one of the first tasks that she took on was, we met with Mike Young, who is in our fleet services. What he told me at that time is that the bookmobile engine itself and condition could go for some time, but it didn't look so great. So Deb took it upon herself, and she went in and got it repainted and new decals put on. So it looks really good. There's always something, because it's aging, that will need to be replaced, but the engine itself, as from what he told me, is still in good condition.
So are we looking at selling the bookmobile, or will it be parked and we could revisit using it at a later point?
I would recommend we would revisit that at a later time. I don't have a recommendation for the bookmobile at this time.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. What this would mean essentially is you're completely changing the types of services within by elimination of your library director and changing some of the way we do relief. It just changes the nature of the service within the system. That would mean no bookmobile services to those other areas of the county. While we have had some decreased usage for the bookmobile, there's still people who use it. The annual savings, the savings for this fiscal year by taking this action is $95,000. The annual savings is $137,000. And just remembering that with this change, we are maintaining the branches and all of the locations that they currently are open at.
So just to be clear, because it's possible to misconstrue what you just said, the savings of $95,000 this year and $137,000 next year is the total that would be realized with all of those, not just the elimination
Oh, no,
of
it's
the
everything.
bookmobile. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Can I ask a question on the bookmobile, because I've heard that that's really utilized by in communities where we have a lot of visitors to the county. Pinecrest, is that?
I don't know. I'd have to defer to,
Okay.
I don't know if we have anyone in here who could answer that. I'm not sure who's.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. I'm inclined to take question or public comment on the library at this time, because I think there's quite a few people that would like to do that. If you just line up on the wall, and again, 3 minutes, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Marilyn Wapner, and I have volunteered at the Twain Harte and Tuolumne Library for the past 10 years. I'm also the president of High Country Friends of the Library. As Tracy said, for the past almost 10 years, we've had no library director. There have been closures, there have been layoffs. We used to have 39 employees, now we have 10 or 11. With Deb Sampson as our library director, we've had accountability, we've had new programs, we've had new equipment. She's written grants, and she's just done a fantastic job. I'm afraid if she goes away again, we'll go back to floating because there's no one currently employed at the library that can lead us in a positive manner.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Carol Crilly, and I'm a resident of Twain Harte, and I've volunteered at the library for probably at least 10, if not 12 years. I repair books for the library. There's no one that is currently repairing books for the library, so I bring them back to life and save the library a tremendous amount of money per book that would normally be thrown in a dumpster. I have a statement I'd like to read about the Twain Harte Library because that's the place where I volunteer. Twain Harte Library is the heart of Twain Harte. The library is where people come to learn and to educate themselves. It is a place where the community comes to check out books, to elevate and entertain themselves, and to also escape from the realities of daily life. Computer use is completely free to all and serves as a lifeline for many, especially when the home computer is not possible or the connections at home fail. The library also serves as a center for socialization in the community with classes, tutoring, craft programs, special interest groups, and is the warming center in the snowy winters and a cooling center in hot summers. The functions of the Twain Harte Library are many and needed and cherished. I, as well as others in the Twain Harte community, implore you, do not tear out the heart of Twain Harte. I should also mention this is true for all the satellite buildings. And I come from a field of education. I've worked in museums all my museum career. I'm retired. I'm not an unintelligent person, but I feel that this is a part of our community that really needs to stand firm and survive. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Daniel Richardson, General Services Agency Director. Just to answer your question on the bookmobile.
Yeah.
So this is where it travels on a weekly basis. Don Pedro Market, Strawberry Store, Willow Springs Clubhouse, Columbia Post Office, East Garden Apartments, Crystal Falls Clubhouse. I think that hits all of them. Gets on a weekly basis.
Okay. So those would not be served?
That's correct. They need to go to a branch library.
Thank you.
Hi. I would like to speak to 3 points. One is that I cannot, for the life of me, see a recreation director and a librarian being combined into a single position. These are both highly skilled and educated positions, and I do not believe that the structure will benefit either department. This library has been floundering for a decade or more. It's got antiquated technology. I can't even begin to see how many systems just sort of kind of tread water, just trying to keep the doors open. Bringing in a professional librarian, somebody who has had experience as a library director, has increased the professionalism and the credibility of this library to the entire community with new programs, with new views to staffing and how the library is presented to the community, I think has brought an immeasurable, and that's the problem, immeasurable benefit to this county. In 2 years, there's been new systems applied. It's only just beginning. It's a real shame that having that now You just eliminate it and go back to treading water. And I think that is a real shame. I would encourage you to perhaps freeze the position. You may not be able to fund it now, but freezing it keeps it in place and keeps that possibility open for the future. And lastly, I just want to put a few cents in for the bookmobile. The bookmobile, yeah, it doesn't cost very much money to keep the bookmobile on the road. There's already the employee's time is not going away. The hours are not going to go away. All it is a little gas and the occasional upkeep on the bookmobile. That's all it takes. And it is the best public relations item that the library has. It's not, honestly, I believe that it's seeing the library, the bookmobile driving around town that is what is the factor. It's not even the locations, whether there's people using it more or less. It's seeing an active bookmobile on the roads in Tuolumne County that is what its greatest benefit is.
Thank you.
If we cannot fund it on the road, I would very much encourage us to keep it at least viable and in condition. It goes to a number of public events, provides books at various,
Ma'am.
there's
Ma'am,
several things.
I need you to wrap up. Thank you very much for your comments.
But I would encourage you to look at all of the alternative and positive things that the bookmobile
Okay.
has done and can still do
Tha-
if you keep it going.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I want to thank the previous speaker. Wow, that was great. So the bookmobile doesn't cost very much, and thank you for bringing up some of the issues, because I heard the engine only has 104,000 miles on it, and as a diesel, it should be able to go 240,000 miles, so it's not falling apart, as is the community rumor, and that several of the expenses from last year were related to the fact that it was so cold up here and things cracked and had to be replaced, so that could happen at any time. But for people who can't go to the library, who don't drive anymore, who have difficulty, the bookmobile is a lifeline. And I would hate to eliminate that when it doesn't cost that much money. And you said that you would maintain branch services, and I would respond that the bookmobile is a branch. And I listened to you piss and moan and bitch and complain, and the grand jury that we didn't have a library director, and we have to have a library director if we have a public library. So you uproot this woman from out of state, move her all the way over here, and then say, oops, sorry, bye. So I have an issue with that. And I've seen the difference she make there, because there's a lot of it's not a library anymore, it's a social services agency, and a lot of those people go above and beyond the call of duty when other agencies in town, I think, should be a little bit more supportive of the services that they're offering. So I don't get that. And then under veteran services, increasing the veteran service officer to a 1.0 FTE, Deb was really happy to take this as a part-time job. So did anyone check with her if she wants to be a full-time employee?
Would you like to answer that?
Okay, so there's lots of comments there. So for veterans, I have not had a direct conversation, but I know others who have had a direct conversation with her and relayed that what her desire would be. When we have a 1.0, I have the authority to allow others not to work up to that. We don't do that very often, but for veterans services, we will work with the VSO to accommodate her schedule. This really is for in the future, when we go to recruit again, that we will be able to actually recruit and get a wider pool of people who will want to be there. With the bookmobile, one of the things we could look at, and this is again when we get outside of the budget and we have a little more time to focus, is one of the things we've talked about in the past that could be considered is, are there volunteers who might like to drive the bookmobile? While it's true that the bookmobile itself really, it's anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000 a year to run the bookmobile. But remember, we have an employee who's 0.75 that almost all of her time goes to servicing and doing preparing and then being out on the road. So that's a cost that's associated with it. So we could look at some opportunities where maybe volunteers might want to work, and we can work to see if the insurance will allow that. But that's one of those options that we could look at for the bookmobile.
Okay. And I will talk to the Veteran Service Officer position a little bit. We had Deb's great. She's absolutely great. But we had, her predecessor was also a very fine Veteran Service Officer, and we lost him because we could not offer him full-time employment. It's rare that we have someone in Deb's situation and in life. So it is important, I think, that we have that position as a full-time position. Not to show my hand or anything, but I have talked to Deb, and I'm obviously, because of my veteran status, I've been very close to the Veteran Service Office my entire time in office. So I think that is important going forward. And that's it. Any other public comment? Okay. We're into
I did
county.
have one more question based off of some of the public comments. What would be the benefit or downside of, rather than eliminating the library director, freezing that position?
I won't say that there's a downside. You just wouldn't fill it. Right now, the only types of positions that I'm recommending that we would freeze would be public safety, and that's because public safety has always been the number one priority for the board. So that would be up to the board on how you would like to handle that.
But that is one that we could potentially look at.
So effectively, the only difference is that with an elimination, we're committing to not filling that position again in the future.
Right, to bring it back later, it takes a vote of the board to do that. And when you're changing the budget after adopted budget, remember, it takes a 4/5 vote to do that. One of the differences here between the positions we're recommending be frozen as opposed to this one, those are vacant. This is not. So you're talking about eliminating someone, yet you're keeping the position, and that's a conversation that, we have not done that before. It doesn't mean we could not do it, but the nature of it is different.
Okay. County Rec.
Okay, so let's talk about recreation. We know that our rec services are widely used in our county, and they are essential to the lives of our families and the youth. So within this recommendation, you will see we are talking about, and someone else who had just kind of jumped ahead a little bit, and that's fine. That means they're reading the material in the back. But they saw that we're recommending taking the recreation manager and creating a recreation library manager. Just so everyone knows, this is not unprecedented. Many, many years ago, before we brought in our first library director, we actually had a library recreation manager. He later moved on and became the director for the senior center. So what it does is we would eliminate, right now there's a vacant recreation supervisor. We're recommending that we would eliminate that position and bring back our full-time activity coordinator. The biggest component with the most risk within all of these recreation cost centers is talking about fees. And we will come back, because we're not asking your board to approve fees right now. That needs to come in a different item, and we'll have more conversation. But each of these cost centers is recognizing some form of revenue due to assumed fees. So in this one, the fees would be $145,000 for this fiscal year. So that has reduced the reduction in the cost between the revenue and changing staff is a net of $198,000.
So the question that always comes up, and I'll just kind of precede it a little bit so that it's out there. When we do look at increasing fees, there could also be a needs assessment associated with that for people that have difficulty meeting the increased fees.
Right, so part of the recommendation when we bring this item to your board here, and it'll be fairly soon, we will look at, you will have the opportunity to see what does it cost to provide the service overall. Now, that might not be what your board adopts as a fee, but you will at least get to see that. The other recommendation we will have is for those at a certain level of income, we could provide a break. So maybe your board should decide that you're only going to charge 50% of the cost that anyone else above that income level might pay. that could offer some discounts. And then the other way is we've talked about doing some fundraising too, so that maybe there's some scholarships available for families who can't even do that, so that we have a way to still offer these services to the families in our county. So there's lots of options we're bringing forward. That's part of why there's some risk associated with the revenues that are assumed, because they could be entirely different than what your board chooses to do when we bring this forward. So with Standard Park, again, the increase here is talking about fees, just so everyone knows. This still, based on this, would not bring this cost center whole for even if we had the same fees for next year. The net cost to run Standard Park is about $250,000. Unfortunately, as many will see, by not charging fees, we often don't have the ability to do the capital improvements that we might have had we been able to generate some revenue here. And there's, from talking with the staff, there's a lot of different things that they would like to be able to do. But in here, for this year, should the board adopt, based on the assumptions that the staff made, it'd be $68,000 for this year, and which converts to about $120,000 next year. Again, we will bring those fee assumptions to you so you can look at them. But I just want to make sure everyone sees at $120,000, we would still have over twice that. That would still be a net county cost. So it's still not bringing it in at full cost. And you'll be able to see both of those when we bring these in.
Hey, Tracy, just to clarify, so this is separate from county recreation. 120 just for Standard Park alone, and
Right.
then increasing fees for county recreation is 198.
They are. So they're all different cost centers in our budget system. So youth centers, you don't charge youth to come to a youth center. It's supposed to be a place they can go, it's safe, they can interact, they can get off the streets. If maybe there's no one at home because they're working, they have a place to go hang out. And for those sometimes in our communities that don't have anywhere at all, again, it's a safe haven for those youth. What we're recommending here is that staff will begin engaging locally for fundraising efforts. And we're hoping to get individuals and maybe businesses and some of our community service groups to sponsor some of these. We have 3 of them, and they offer great services to the youth that they serve. So we will proactively, right now, you'll see there's a potential increase in revenue of $13,000. We didn't go crazy with that. They already usually get a little bit, but this is saying we will actively go out there and start soliciting for some sponsors within the youth centers. Any questions on any, you might want to?
Any public comment on rec and all the cost centers associated with it?
Carmian Miwak. I did have a question on the scope of the job of the positions on the first slide, the supervisor versus the activities director. Well, what will that look like?
So first, right now, we already have, so in our recreation, we actually have the manager, we have a supervisor, and we actually have 2 supervisors. So what it does is it takes that exempt position and creates a lower level position that will still be full-time that interacts directly with the youth in those programs throughout the entire year because it's full-time.
Okay, so that's the hands-on position
Yes.
then
yeah.
there.
And our supervisors are hands-on. Our supervisor, Eric Aiken, who's the manager, he's hands-on and he is providing services, as does our supervisor at Standard Park. He's actually out there working on the field too.
That's always good to know. And then the next slide, if we go to that. Not that one, the next one after that. On the youth centers, I've gone and visited some of them, and one of the concerns is that towards the evening hours, some are open till like 7. It would be nice if the hours were a little bit later on the weekends to catch the kids that really need supervision. And in other counties, I know that they have had satellite offices for probation, like juvenile probation officers, because we can't expect the youth center directors to be doing supervision of kids that are telling them to F off and different things. But again, those are the kids that need the supervision. And if we're looking at changes with our juvenile justice system and how we're going to operate that here, then one of the suggestions that I would make would be like, in the past that we did in Butte County would be to have satellite offices where the juvenile probationers are out near the community centers. Maybe they could even be out there on the evenings and the weekends and try to have a positive relationship with some of those kids who may likely be on probation, but yet having supervision backup for the director of the youth centers.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Yeah, again, my name's Cliff Marchetti, and I'm still living in Tuolumne.
You haven't moved.
Haven't moved in the last couple hours. After listening to your CAO speak on My Mother Lode on Sunday, and talking to Daniel last week, and reading a recent article regarding fee structures for the youth and recreation programs, I really felt compelled to get up here and say something about fees. Since Prop 13, and this dates me because I've been a recreation professional for 30 years. I retired out of Parks and Recreation, so I remember Prop 13 cuts. California cities, all recreation programs in California cities have survived only because they changed their fee structure. And what I mean is that you looked at the cost and you tried to recapture as much of that cost as possible, 60, 80% fee recovery or whatever the market would bear. You need to do that. It's the only way you're going to be able to provide the services to the kids, because if you can't, in Parks and Recreation, if you rely on general fund money to operate, you'll lose all your programs. So finding that and reading that, you hadn't really looked at this as a big issue over the years is, I'm really happy that you're doing it now, because you have to. It's the only way it's going to work. People aren't going to be really happy about the new fees, but it's the only way Parks and Rec will survive. And on the same note, when we were talking about facilities, I looked into the facility fees for county facilities. And lo and behold, I went to the last time you discussed this, 1989, 30 years ago, and found that since then, even though it was mandated that you would increase fees or look at fees every year, you haven't done it. You have to look at your facilities fees and increase facility fees for nonprofit and private groups using your buildings. They need to be maintained. They need to be taken care of. And if you don't have fees to do that, there's no way the county or any other agency can keep those facilities up and running. As a Parks and Rec person and working for the district, we put together a proposal for increasing fees for the county because we were doing Memorial Hall. I took it to the board along with the staff. We've forwarded that on to the county so that the county can look at a fee structure that might work for you. It's not our recommendation that you do it. It's just something you take a look at, and it sounds like you're going to be doing that in the future. Something very important. You really start to need to look at those revenues through fees. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Okay, seeing no more public comments, we'll go right through the rest of the briefing, and we'll take public comments at the end.
Okay. All right, I do want to hit on, and Supervisor Rotifer, you already did this, but right now we are looking at a budget where we really have very little ability to affect the revenues. I don't want anyone to think that we're not looking at both sides of the equation here, because we are. We have to get this budget has to be passed. It must be balanced. We have a requirement from the state of California in which we have until October 2nd that we would have a balanced budget to them, which means we need to work on what we have right now, and then we begin affecting the other side of the equation. So our community will be seeing a lot of conversations related to fee structure for services, fee structures for rental of our county buildings for non-governmental agencies. And we're also going to be completely restructuring the way that we do those rentals, which will include, they will have to have insurance. There will be an hourly fee, and it will be based on cost, and that will be brought all to your board in the near future so we can begin looking at those. In the meantime, and I know there's some conversation about general revenues, the TOT tax and sales tax and other taxes, like you said, those need to be done on a general election, and we have one in March and we have one in November. So we will be working with your board in the near future on discussing those types of revenue measures as well. So just so everyone knows, we are looking at both. We're actively doing both, but first we need to get this budget passed because we can't affect the other side yet. So let's get this done while we have the time.
Yeah, and I'll just tag on to CAO Riggs's comment. Okay, we are not just looking at this year's budget. The staff is not just looking at this year's budget. The cost of doing business in county goes up every year, and unfortunately, historically has gone up faster than revenues have gone up. Our revenue picture is better if you just look at the revenue side than it's been in past years. The difficulty is the cost of doing business is going up faster than our revenue stream is going up. So we are looking, just to put everybody at ease, we are looking at next year and the out years, and what, as every slide has presented, there's a this year savings or cost, and then there's a recurring savings or cost. So we are looking at this in the context of future budgets as well. And our goal this year is to balance the budget, not just balance the budget, but balance the budget to minimize the impact, expected impact in future years. So with that having been said, Ms. Riggs, please proceed.
Okay, we have a cost center that's called Transfers Out. And this is where in county budgets, you have all the costs related to transferring to other departments. So for example, we have a transfer of almost $1 million out of the general fund to roads, and that's the maintenance of effort for the SB1 that passed recently. We have maintenance of effort for child welfare services, behavioral health services. We transferred a fire out of here, and that's where you'll see we did an increase in our transfer to fire. We originally had $450,000, and that now we have 820,000. So it's not the full 500 we thought we would need. That was good. But again, we have some assumptions in the fire budget that if those did not work out the way that we've assumed, we would need to come back and talk with your board. The other thing that we have in here is we're recommending, and we'll kind of get into fund balance like we started in the beginning, is assumed in this budget is an increase, and it's not written up here, so I apologize, but it's an increase to capital, which is where the capital fund is where we have our internal loan for the law and justice and juvenile costs that were not absorbed into the bond that we went out to and got for the building the jail. So we've increased that transfer out by $506,000, which would allow us to pay off that loan this year, which frees up for that particular loan debt service of $400,000. We also have where we increased to our debt service cost center, which is where we have the loan for like the mine and for the law and justice, the jail. We've increased that amount over there so that we could pay off the property early. And the way that Deb is doing this, she will pay off all of those as of July 1st, which means we save interest for the 11 months worth of the year. So there's some additional savings that will be recognized by her taking that action. So that's what you're seeing in here for our transfers out and the increase in our debt service. Now we're going to start talking about where are we. So like I said, Deb had estimated when we did the recommended, we had a estimated beginning fund balance of $2.1 million. She's estimating actually that it will be closer to $2.3 million. So the first thing we do is we look at funding our contingencies. Right now, board policy is $750,000, and then we look at putting $250,000 in reserves. So that's $1 million of it, which brings us down to the 1.3. So when we talk about that, what's the board policy? So we talk about paying off debt, which I did discuss of $534,000 going towards the internal loan for law and justice and juvenile costs that could not be absorbed into the bond. Then we're talking about, we also have the pay down unfunded liabilities. That is another policy that your board adopted for budget. We have a couple here. Now, these aren't perfect right yet as we work through the budget, but we could pay down some internal unfunded liabilities. We discussed those earlier in our budget presentation. So the leave liability and our post-retirement medical, both of those, we could pay down the unfunded liability in those accounts. The other thing is we're remembering that we have some key assumptions in here related, say, to fire and the contract, as well as revenue for our recreation cost centers. We could take $200,000 and place additional monies into our contingencies, which would allow us to be more prepared if those assumptions that we put into the budget don't work out throughout the year. Then there's some...
Can I stop you right there? So fund balance, why aren't we using that money to pay for some of these cuts that we've made? The reason is that fund balance is one-time money. It's available this year. It may or may not be available next year. So when we're trying to look forward, it's not a wise financial decision if you just have one-time money to make obligation or continue obligations that continue into future years, or you're going to end up in the same position next year that we're in this year and every subsequent year. So that's why the board policy has been what it's been in the past. I just put that out there for public information.
So the good news is outside of beginning fund balance, with all the reductions that we do have some residual recurring fund balance, meaning we've made enough reductions that your board has some options to consider that you could add back in. I will always put out the caveat that being conservative, we know, and we're going to get to the slide of what's coming forward. So by adding these things back, we will be adding to our problems next year. But we have the option, additional options for use of some of that funding is reinstating these public safety positions. If you were to reinstate these positions, say as of January 1st, which would allow us to recognize some cost savings for the first 6 months, that cost for all 6 of these positions, so deputy district attorney, 3 deputy sheriffs, probation officer, and an animal control officer, that cost would be $231,000. And we do have residual fund balance, meaning current balance that you could utilize to put towards that. The other thing is we are doing a restructure for our community development department. We have in the past couple of years put money into contractual services for outside plan check, sorry. And that was removed during this budget process as a savings. We have some funds left. You could also, because it's contractual, this could be utilized even with your beginning fund balance, where we could put $40,000 back into that cost center so that as they're doing a restructure, they're able to use outside contractual services to get some of those plans pushed out so that the contractors aren't being held up. We're just bringing up, we're not asking a decision, just we look at again, we'll be bringing back to your board the Tuolumne Parks and Rec contract, and that right now is built into the budget. We did not remove it, it's still there. And then finally, one of the conversations we've been talking about over this last couple of years is that we have really one county vehicle for the entire building here for county staff. So any of the travel that they do, that vehicle's old and it's outdated, and most employees don't like driving it. And what happens is they're using their own vehicle, and we are required by Internal Revenue Code to reimburse them at a specified rate. That often is more expensive than if we were to just buy a vehicle that was county-owned, and we require the employees to use those vehicles. So we are recommending and asking that your board would consider taking some of that one-time fund balance and applying it towards 2 vehicles. One we are recommending would be a 4-wheel drive SUV and then a sedan, and those would be placed down in our parking lot down here, and staff would be required to use those before they use their own vehicle for any type of work travel.
Okay. If I can interject a comment, have we looked at lease options and the long-term cost to the county of lease options as opposed to purchase?
We have, it's a very big conversation. There will be an outlay in the beginning. I think we looked at maybe close to $500,000, but that would only be if we did everything at once, and we'll be bringing that to your board fairly soon as well.
Tracy, real quick, are the 3 deputy sheriffs, are those jail or is this?
Those are
street
patrol.
Patrol?
Yeah. Okay, then I threw in the very last slide because we are looking forward. And once we get through this, our office will begin working with departments so that we can do what we used to do, which is maybe a 2 or 3 year projected budget, so we can start looking at where are we going in the future. You may remember a few years ago, just even last year, the year before, what was projected for the 1920 year was significantly more than what we're dealing with now. So the actions we've been taking over the years have helped. However, as we continue to watch the state realignment and reform, especially related to public safety, it is continuing to put more demand on our resources for that, and where it limits the ability for your board to provide services outside of public safety. And that's what we continue to struggle with. And then we listen, as our governor is saying, he has a $21 billion surplus, and yet our rural counties and cities are struggling to maintain library services and recreation services. We will begin having more of those conversations at our RCRC and CSAC level, but I want everyone to know, and my colleagues that I talk to across the state, many of our rural counties are dealing with exactly this, and it's a difficult place to be in. So I want to talk about looking forward. So we have some good news, and then we have what's coming up. So the good news is, if your board takes the action as recommended today to pay off those 2 debts, we would have $781,000 of payments that we've been making that would be freed up to put towards services in future years. The other thing is, we've been doing a ton of work in IT, and we are in the process of a finance HR budget conversion. So we're leaving Oracle and we're moving into a different software. That has required, there's a lot of fees, there's a lot associated with that. We have $700,000, or approximately $700,000, that's sitting in the IT budget today that will not need to be carried forward to the budget in 2021. As a result, that means we're freeing up, just in those 2 items or 3 items, $1.5 million of savings that we can carry forward into future years. So here's the bad news. As Deb gave me yesterday what she's expecting for PERS, and many of us are going to the annual PERS conference this year so we can interact and learn more about what their intentions are. We're looking at another $1 million increase just for that fixed payment. Increase, yes, $1 million increase above what we already pay for the PERS cost this year. Our salaries and benefits, and I do expect this to go down. We haven't recalculated with all the changes we're recommending, but originally we had said about a $1.5 million increase in salaries and benefits, and I do want to take a minute to explain what that means. We have 2 other MOUs, bargaining units, that will be applied when we move forward. They had a 4-year contract, where all the rest had a 3-year contract. We also have individuals, we recognize the savings when someone who was tenured, meaning they had longevity, they were at what we have an A to an E step, so tenured employees are at the E step. They're being paid at the highest amount. We recognize the savings over the years to bring in those less experienced employees who started at, say, the A or B step, but now what we're watching is they're going through their steps and they're earning that additional money as they become more experienced in what they're doing. That's what's driving a lot of this. And then this is just an estimate, we don't know for sure, but you already saw we're looking at about $670,000 for the required staffing for the new jail. But we have, as you heard some others talk about, we need to look at the medical. The average cost for an inmate for a year is about $10,000 for medical care. Then there's the food, and there's other services, utilities, linens, laundry, all of that will need to be increased as we look at increasing our census. I'm working with the sheriff on what that might be, and we will bring that to you later in the year. So do we cap it? Do we not bring in as many? We know we need to increase it a bit. The grant does require we increase it by at least 1 bed, but we are requesting and recommending that we would maybe go up additional 20, 25 beds, and that's what's going to give the teeth to the courts and to probation for those who aren't following the rules as they were given when they were sentenced or when they had supervision. So as you can see, we have about $2.5 million that we know will increase next year above what we have right now. So any time that action that we don't take, that we carry forward into the following year. So with that, if you want to do comments, and then we can go through the decisions.
Okay, I'm going to give the public one last chance to take their shots. I would ask those, I'm not going to say you can't come up again, but those that have spoken before, please do not repeat yourself. Talk to some new points. We've heard it once. It didn't go in one ear and out the other, so please, come on up.
Good afternoon, Chairman Rodeford, members of the board. My name is David Goldenberg. So I've got some questions here. One on page 17, the net shortage. That is for fiscal year 2020, 21 and on, is that correct?
I'm not necessarily saying it's a shortage. I'm saying it's an increase in what we have what we have right now.
Correct.
It doesn't have any built-in assumptions for increased revenues, which, as I stated earlier, we've always had increased revenues.
Okay. So for this fiscal year, 2019, 2020, this entire package, if adopted, and I know there's more work to be done in approval process, that'll bring us to a balanced budget, or we still have a shortfall that's unaccounted for?
It will balance us for this fiscal year, yes. And it does provide for contingencies, paying off debt, and putting money into reserves.
Okay. And looking at this sheet, it looks like a total layoffs of 6.5 PY.
And I'll get to that sheet here pretty soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the unfunded liabilities, did that include the previously discussed at board meetings sometime back on the CalPERS unfunded liability for the TCEDA?
So the unfunded liabilities specified in this report are internal unfunded liabilities, such as our, we have workers' compensation, post-retirement medical, leave liability. Those are all internal that we keep, that we need, that are working on right now. So it does not address PERS.
Okay. Understand the county fire budget is a little bit nebulous because it changes slightly, and there's some discussion about funding sources for it. Should we go to an increase looking for revenue? Understand sales tax, that can only occur on a general election, is that correct?
That is my understanding. However, we do have county counsel and our elections clerk in here who could provide more specific information.
That's correct.
Any tax has to be approved by the public at an election.
Yeah, no, I understand that. It's just whether or not it could be, I guess, done at a general election, or could a special election be called for?
Sorry, what's the question?
So sales tax, for instance, special election, would that be allowable for a sales tax increase, a vote?
Sure, a special election could always be called for, would it be a general or a special tax?
General.
Well, I
Because
guess
that's what makes a difference.
I guess two items. If the county was looking
Okay.
at a sales tax, potential sales tax increase.
Can I refer you to county council after this, because this discussion has already gone over the 3 minutes, and I think it has the potential to go on for quite a while. So if you would just get with county council at the end, and he can answer your questions.
And I'll just say real quick, a special election would take, in order to organize that, it would take an amount of time to where we would be near to the midterm anyway.
Okay.
And there'd be an additional cost associated with a
Right.
special election that wouldn't be associated with the normal election.
Okay, I understand. Just the final question is, at previous discussions at the board level was talking about the shortage in the fire department for the apparatus, roughly $7.5 million. Is that being addressed in these budget discussions?
No, it's not. Not in the current budget discussion right now. We will have those in the future, though, in the very near future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Is there more? I thought we
So-
got to the end.
Yeah, what we haven't talked about is your board providing direction on the personnel. So we
okay.
do have the 2 handouts. Those have been provided to you and to the members sitting in the back of the room.
Okay, before we get there, are there any questions of the board thus far that would like, okay, press on.
Okay, so you have 2 handouts. There's one that is approximately 2 pages, and it's color-coded. What this is meant to show is these are the number of positions that are being affected with this recommended budget proposal. What you will see for the general fund, it says that there would be a 6.48 reduction, but remember with that, we are adding 9 new positions that are very, very specific for the jail. So if you were to add those 9 back, it would be about 15 and a half positions that are really being affected with this budget proposal. What I do want to make sure that everyone knows, and that we've always done this and we will do this now, for those who are being affected where they will receive a layoff notice, we will do everything in our power through all those restructuring and vacant positions to get those individuals into positions so we keep them employed. They have to meet the MQs, and we will work with them and look at their history and their experience, their education and licensure, and we will do everything to fit them in where it's most appropriate.
For the public MQs or minimum qualification.
Sorry, yes,
Yep.
you're right, thank you. So then you have a second second list, and that one is where we actually need to issue some form of notice. So for the ones in blue, we would ask that your board would provide, give authority to staff to issue layoff notices. Again, those, the only individuals who would actually get a notice would be those that we cannot fit into a vacant position somewhere else, just so you know that. So I am asking for your authority to begin that process, and then we'll begin the process of working with those employees, the meet and confer, the obligations that we have with the unions, and working through the process of what does this look like for the future. The second component we would need to do, if your board is going to approve it, is there are 2 orange highlighted individuals or positions on your worksheet, and those are your 2 appointed department heads. If your board wanted to take action and take the recommendation contained in this proposal before you, you would need to take separate action to terminate the contracts and direct me to provide, or staff to provide, the 90-day notice as required by their contracts. And then we have County Council and Human Resources here for any additional questions or about process, or just about that, how we do that.
Okay. Public comment on that item? Okay. I think what I would like to do, because we've been up here for a while, I think I would like to go ahead and break for lunch and have that discussion when we come back from lunch. Is that amenable to the board? Okay. So we are going to break for lunch. We will come back at 2:30, and we will have the discussions with the board members. And I really do, honestly, this is no fun for any of us, and I really do want to thank the public for all the help and comments, and I know sometimes our eyes glaze over, but we really are interested. So we are going to adjourn for lunch. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and reconvene our board meeting for today. I want to thank everybody for coming back after lunch. And we're up to, I think we're up to board comments. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the discussion to my colleagues about what they heard this morning. First of all, does anybody need the, our CAO? There you go. County Administration Officer to do any recap or anything like that, since we have been out to lunch?
Maybe if you could just put up the slide of the options, additional options that we have there, just for everybody to look at again.
Okay. So with that in mind, you want to go first, Supervisor Gray?
We all know what a difficult exercise this has been to go through. It's never easy. Some years are harder than others, and this is one of the very hard ones. I think it's important for everyone to know that we're not making a final decision right now. We're going to give the CEO and staff directions to come back, but I think it's important to look at this particular slide and see if, when they do come back, if there's any ways that we can include some or all of it. I don't see a particular way of doing all of it, but sometimes there are magic dollars out there. I don't know where they'll come from, but please take a look at these additional options very seriously and see if there's something that we can do. So that's my comment.
Okay. I don't see anybody jumping up. I'll just reemphasize what Supervisor Gray commented on, and I think it's very important. There's going to be, potentially, there may be a motion today, but it's going to have to do with notification people that are currently employed by the county that may not be in the future. That's required for us to get a leg up. It's not a final decision. And what we're principally going to do here is give the CAO and the entire staff some guidance based on the information that we've got on how to bring back a final budget recommendation next board meeting, which will be the 7th? Third of next month, I'm sorry. And then obviously we don't even have to make a final decision then. So there are some future manipulations that can occur after that date as well. But we will have to, unless we have an added-on special meeting, we will have to, on the 17th, make a final decision on the budget and what personnel actions and all of that we will be taking. So this is certainly not a first step. Those that have been working on the budget and this board individually this is the first meeting that we've met as a board, but individually we've all been working with the CAO and the staff on this for some time. But it is the first open public presentation of what it is that we're considering, and I emphasize considering, not doing. So with that having been said, Supervisor
I was
Brannon.
formulating my thoughts.
That's okay. I gave you plenty of time.
You did. And I think we have all said this to differing degrees, but I really, again, want to emphasize that this was a very deliberative process. And I want to thank our chair and our CAO, and quite frankly, all of our staff for going through this exercise. I want to thank the public, because the public has been engaged and they've been participating. And it's important. And I think I've had a number of individuals that have reached out and said, wow, I really had no idea. And to our employees, I think we have demonstrated through this exercise that our employees do more with less than I'd put them up against any county in the state of California. And this, I am sorry for the anxiety that this has created for our employees. It was never intended to do that, and I hope that they understand that this exercise was really to look at what are the funds, what are we mandated to do, and what's left, and how do we make this all function and come together with some unity. The one piece that I really do want to call out, though, is that was a little bit frustrating is social media. And I understand that's a tool for awareness, but some of our employees received some very serious threats. And that just goes beyond the pale and is just not necessary. And so as we go through these, as we continue to go through these pieces, please remember, we all love Tuolumne County. We all absolutely want the best for Tuolumne County. Our answers may be a little bit different. They may be a lot different. But at the end of the day, each and every one of us, including all of us sitting up here, love Tuolumne County and want the best for Tuolumne County. Before I get to this slide, because there are a couple of pieces that I want to be able to look at also, I would say that I hope we have as much interest on the revenue generation side of this conversation, and that people understand that if we want to get past a subsistence level of service, and we want to be able to do some of the things that we've heard over the last couple of weeks, we are going to have to look at different revenue sources. So with that, Ms. Riggs, the bookmobile, could we, when this comes back, could we see an option, what that would mean if that was back in our suite?
Absolutely.
Of decisions. And then I want to follow up on some comments that were made earlier, because I'm not sure I was clear, and I understand that we were putting a freeze on just really those safety positions. question was raised about a freeze on the librarian position, and I'd like to explore that option a little bit more also.
So the difference here, and County Council and I were discussing this actually during the break, is that these positions that are listed that are public safety, those are vacant. To eliminate and lay an individual off and freeze the position is simply not the same, and Sarah could speak to that as well, because she had some concerns
I
related.
appreciate that. That clarification is, thank you for that. That would be illegal, yes.
Okay, either way. Yeah.
Everybody will get their shot.
Well, you're going to hear a lot of the same stuff. Supervisor Brennan took a lot of the words out of my mouth right there. Yeah, I also wanted to thank the county administrator and staff. This presentation, this process has been the most accurate, the most honest, and the most public budget process that I've ever observed in the county since I've been aware of these things. And I also want to thank the public for being a part of that. I think, I've seen the change where the perception has been that county employees are overpaid, Board of Supervisors are a bunch of bums, don't know what they're doing, and we've seen in black and white that we're just barely making it with the staff that we have, with the funding that we have, so I'm really glad for all of the calls and emails, even some of the mean ones. I've listened to them all and read them all, even if I haven't responded. I've tried to respond to most of them, but there have been a lot. So we have growing financial obligations, and some of those are outside of our control. We've got $1.2 million cost for health care for inmates. That's going to be on the agenda. $1 million more for PERS next year. But some of these are not out of our control. We've taken on expenses and projects that are pretty large. And so it has to come from somewhere. And I think we're trying to find an equilibrium, a point where we can keep going with the services that we have. I'm glad that we're facing this head on, and that we're dealing with the problems that we can now, so that we're not going to be here year after year. That being said, I completely agree with Supervisor Brennan's statement about the bookmobile. I think for the cost that it is, and particularly for some of the constituents in my district, which does not have a library branch, I think that's a resource that we need to maintain, especially given the other sacrifices that department is making. I think that some of the suggested budget options here, I think it's pretty heavily weighted on Parks, Library, and Recreation, given the size of those departments. I'd kind of like to shift the needle a little further away from that if possible. I know that, nobody's safe. There's, everybody's going to have to give up a little bit in this, but, I just kind of did a back of the envelope calculation. It looks like about 12% of the shortfall that we're looking at is being secured through reductions in those areas. And so that's well outside of their size in the overall budget. I'm very supportive of reducing Board of Supervisor costs for off-site meetings. I've wanted that from the beginning, so I'm happy to see that. And the last thing I wanted to mention was facilities. I agree strongly that we need to maintain that at the level that was recommended. So,
Thank you.
You sure you want me to turn this on?
Oh, go for it.
All right.
Hey, we've been here long
A
enough.
lot to digest, but September 17th is going to be here before we know it. So First of all, thank you, staff. Tracy, I've been emailing you every weekend for like a month, and you're always responding, and I know staff has been up night and day working on this, so thank you guys. And it's not easy, but it needs to be done, and I'm glad we're here, and but it's not easy. So a few things that I really like, and I campaign on this, and I'm a firm believer in this, just with my background, is debt. We got to pay down our debts. We got to get out from that noose around our neck. So any action towards debts, I fully support. Contingencies, I know I've talked to Tracy about having a future presentation about, a 3-year plan and trying to get our contingencies up in the future. So that's something that I'm going to be looking for in the future. A few things that I want to look into is, we've talked about that Parks and Rec contract with Tuolumne. We're talking about bringing on 2 additional full-time employees when that contract, I think, is you're getting about 3 or 4 employees for the buck at the Tuolumne level. And growing up in Tuolumne City and going to Mudlow Christian and seeing people use needles on the side of the street, when I was in 2nd and 3rd grade, and seeing what it is now and with the beautiful venues that they have there, and it's just a good upcoming place. So I really want to make sure that those facilities are maintained. So I want to look into if we're really going to get the bang for our buck if we were to end that contract. Parks and Rec, I got young kids, and I think we do need to look at the structure fee for it, but we need to make sure it's really reasonable. I think some of the numbers that I was presented were not reasonable. So I think we need to come up with a reasonable solution with that. When it comes to the library, I'll be blunt. I'm glad that we didn't see cuts to it, but honestly, I don't use the libraries, I use technology. But, part of being a representative for your district is you got to hear the concerns of your constituents. And believe me, I heard more than I ever want to hear about these libraries. And really what did it for me was my wife said I'd be a jackass if I ever closed the Tween Heart Library. So you can thank my wife, Amy, because she's a homeschooler and she uses it. And so thank you for making that work within this budget. I do think there does need to be a little bit of restructuring. The bus, I think there's going to be more discussion about that. But if things need to be taken off the board, I'm fine with that. Okay, so here comes, here's what I have to say about animal control, district attorney, and the sheriff. As we read, as it was presented, public safety is the first responsibility of local government. And I've been saying that since before I was at this desk, not because I'm in law enforcement, but because that truly is the foundation of what our government is supposed to be doing, is providing safety for its citizens. And, there was that attack that happened up in Tween Heart over the weekend, and from my understanding, it seemed like within a few minutes, the entire sheriff's organization was there, which means the rest of Tuolumne County was without any deputies on the streets. So, we all complain about services and things happening, but when stuff hits the fan, like we revived a guy here a few weeks ago who had a heart attack on the floor. Imagine if law enforcement personnel or emergency personnel weren't around and we had to wait 12 minutes for that. He would have been dead. And so you take that to the streets and you take that to emergencies, you take that to fire. I get it. It's frustrating because a lot of times I don't think the community gets it, but so where I'm going with this, and I might get some pushback, I'm sure I will, but it's okay. We have a juvenile hall that's going to cost us $1.5 million to operate next year. And I've worked in probation. I know that our juvenile hall is top-notch in the state. The services that it provides, the recidivism rate appears to be supporting those services. It's a good program. I think my frustration as first of all, as a citizen, but as a board member, and we've been discussing it, is that we don't have, the people who are utilizing that facility are not paying what they should be for the costs. And so there's been a lot of discussion about regionalizing it and bringing, trying to get some additional funding for it. And I get that. My concern is that I'm concerned that that discussion is going to go on for a few years, and maybe even a few more years, and then maybe there really won't be any resolution. And the reason why I believe that is because the state of California is building additional juvenile halls when they know we can't afford the juvenile halls that we have. And so when our legislators and Newsom sits on a $21 billion surplus, I think they're completely out of touch with what is going on at our local level. And so animal control, again, I didn't realize how much that affected people. But if I can get animal control, a district attorney, and another sheriff back on patrol, I don't know what the exact costs were. But if we're operating the juvenile hall at $1.5 million, and $500,000 of that's already would go back to their budget, I think the savings would be around $500,000 a year. My honest opinion is I think we need to start playing offense and stop playing defense. And I think we need to notify the state that we're going to close down our juvenile hall and stop waiting for them to come to the table and force them to come to the table. I think it's a little ridiculous that we are where we're at and that there's, like I said, there's this $21 billion surplus, and we can't fund animal control positions. We have to cut our DA. We're taken from the sheriff. We were talking about closing libraries. The very kids, we're talking about thousands of kids that we touch in our community with Parks and Recs. We might price out for a handful of kids at the juvenile hall that absolutely need the services that are provided, but that aren't being provided for financially from other communities. So if it were me, and there's nobody else up here, my recommendation, or what I would like you guys to look into, would be to start, not the conversation, but the action of closing down that facility and notifying the state to see if we can't get them to take some of that surplus or come up with something quicker than just a conversation to offset the cost of operating that facility. So I know that's going to upset a lot of people in this room, but you know what? Before I was elected to this position, these thoughts were through my mind. Now I'm up here. I can't play politics and do what sounds best or looks best. And I'm not saying anybody up here is, but I firmly believe, we're talking about going after revenues. I don't think we're ever going to get revenue increases when our community watches us spend the money the way we're spending money on that facility. That sounds ridiculous, but when you talk about what happened with Larry Cope and what's happening with the juvenile hall, those two things are burnt into people's minds, and they're not going to support any revenue increase, I think, if we keep doing business the way we're doing business, specifically with this hall. So if we go to the table, if we play offense and we start taking action to do what I feel is in the best interest of our finances and of other services that we're providing, I think we're going to have a much better chance being transparent with our constituents that, hey, we are doing everything we can, and at the end of the day, if it's still not enough, then it's up to them if they want to start providing more funding for those services. So in a nutshell, there's a lot that's been discussed. I'm going to go through this more tonight. Maybe I'll have more to discuss at the next meeting, but that's my thoughts.
Okay, just one thing, point of information. I think we have been on the offensive with the state. The problem is they have the leverage of the grant that we built that under, and if we can't threaten to unilaterally walk away and close that, because they can then come after us for the payments on the grant. And that would be a lot more than operating the juvenile hall. But we do have to put more pressure on them, and I agree with you on that.
Well, the payments, and that's kind of where I would want to have more discussion, the payments on the grant, even if we were making payments on the grant and still saving money, that'd still be saving money that we could put towards
No, you wouldn't.
other services.
No, you wouldn't. The grant payment money.
How much would a grant payment money? If it's 1.5 to operate,
I've not calculated what the terms and what the payment would be on it.
So the grant was $16 million. So, and there's no guarantee that the state would let us make payments. So what the grant documents say is that the county would be liable for that amount of money. And I guess it would be asking them if they would kindly let the county make payments, but it's $16 million bare minimum.
Okay. Well, I think if we pursue that, instead of a conversation, go down that road, maybe that's where we'd start getting some actual ideas for other ways to maybe utilize it or to create that region. I'm just afraid if we're just going to talk about it for years. And that's my concern. I don't want to be here next year talking about the same thing. So that's my recommendation.
Okay, Supervisor Gray?
So I did start it off, but I'll finish up.
I don't know if I'm going to finish up.
You want to finish up? Okay. Supervisor Kirk, I understand a lot of what you're talking about. Believe me, because I've been here for a long time, went through the whole process, and know how difficult it was to get to where we're at, how painful it was to build it. But we built it under a different time, under different rules, under different regulations, and it, hindsight's always wonderful. But when we went through the process, I truly believe it was the right thing to do. I'm certainly open to the conversation, but it's you can take it completely out of the picture. It's not going to solve our problem. You can go lock it tomorrow. It's not going to solve the long-term problem. So have the conversation. That's fine if there's a solution, and I certainly will get behind it. I just know, and when I echo Judge Sigurdsson's words, there is a drastic need, and there was a drastic need for some sort of facility like that. Now, is that the right model? Now, it probably isn't. So that's the conversation that I think we need to do. On the public safety issue, certainly, we've always put that as a priority, and we've always done our best not to take away, and that's why I said earlier, I asked that slide to be put up as additional options so that we could really address those and see if there's a way that we can return those. The freeze idea is a good idea, because what we're doing with that freeze is we're giving the CEO the authority to fill those positions without them coming back to the board. So I'm totally behind that. And I do know that the employees are committed, the CEO is committed, and I know I'm committed that if there's a way to get those things back, we're going to do it. So whenever you're ready to
Okay.
have a motion, I'd be happy to.
Okay, Supervisor Campbell?
Yeah, and I wanted to weigh in on that as well. So, I made no secret that I had a lot of misgivings about how the juvenile center came to be. But the fact is it's there now. When we started this budget process, I didn't see a way that we could work this out without losing the juvenile hall and without losing, all the libraries and all these extremely important public services. But I think that we've worked through it to the point where we can maintain most of the services we have. And I'm sort of at the point where, starting the process of closing the juvenile hall might solve our immediate budget problems, a percentage of our immediate budget problems, but it would create 10 times as many problems for next year and into the future, because we'd have to go, we just spent years reorganizing the system, and we've come to a pretty effective, an extremely effective program for juvenile offenders in our county. And yeah, it's very expensive, but it works. And undoing it now would incur additional costs, and it would cause worse outcomes for the people that use that. So, it would kind of be cutting off your nose to spite your face type territory. So I've kind of reached an uneasy equilibrium with that, where if we can do it all and keep our essential services going and maintain the juvenile hall, then we should make every effort to do that. And I don't think we're there yet to where we need to scrap everything to keep the lights on in the county. The other thing I wanted to mention that I neglected to mention earlier was I agree that with your organization of reinstating positions as additional, if worst, best case scenario funds become available, reinstating the positions listed on the slide you have there. I think that's a good order for it. Obviously, district attorney has been high on the list of what's been discussed, and I think that's the area we need to start first if we're able to move funds around.
Okay, so I get to finish up, I guess. Again, I want to thank the public, not just the people that are here, but if you're out there listening, all the people that came in this morning, waited around while we have our closed session, spoke very eloquently. And those people who have sent in emails and texts and stuff, I know I mentioned it, I think it was at one of our last meetings, that don't expect a response from me because I would be doing nothing but responding to emails. That's kind of the volume that we got, but they have been very helpful, so I want to thank you folks. I want to thank the staff, and I'm not sure the public really understands the total investment, both emotional and professional, technical effort that has gone into this process. This is by far the most open budget process that we've had since I got elected. Quite frankly, I wanted to have this kind of a process after my first budget. I've never had as much confidence in my knowledge of the pieces that go together to make up a budget as I have this year. And I really want to thank the staff for that. And for those of you in the public that can't appreciate everything that goes into this, think about the people whose jobs and livelihood have been out there in the public eye as potential cuts and reorganizations and all of the uneasiness and all of the anxiety, personal anxiety that they're going through. And yet they made their contributions to all of the presentations that you've seen. So I really want to thank our staff for their selfless dedication to their jobs and really to the public's welfare. So here's what I would like to propose. I'm fine with the presentation as it exists. My understanding is that we've got approximately, where'd the number go? $266,000.
So you have two different numbers that you're working with here, and you don't have the schedules because they're not all balanced, is why we didn't. Because we
Exactly.
still have our non-general
Okay,
fund departments
well-
are working. So you have a beginning fund balance, and then you have what we have the ending fund balance. Ending is
Sure.
what comes out after we plug up all those things we use
Sure, I
beginning fund
understand.
balance.
So what I'm looking at is, I really don't like the public safety cuts. If we have to, I agree with the freezing of them. But if we can accommodate those, and I'll leave it up to staff to come back and talk to us, but I would really like all those positions back in if the ending fund balance allows. I agree with probably most of the supervisors, if not all of them, that the bookmobile, the marginal cost associated with that is not worth the emotional public outcry on canceling it. So
Remember that there is an FTE associated with the bookmobile, so it's not just the 6,000 to operate, it's
I
a
know.
full FTE that you need to keep it going. Just want to make sure that's clear. I don't want
Okay.
everyone focusing
well,
on this of
let's
4,000 to
see what
6,000.
that total cost
Yes,
is.
absolutely.
Okay. On the third, obviously. I think that's pretty much what I had. I do want, I think a lot of members of the public don't realize, if you look at our county staff, and you look at counties that have similar or in many cases less population than we do, with the exception of one county that I know of, we are understaffed. We have a much leaner staff almost across the board than per capita than other counties. There's a reason for that. We have a much higher percentage of our county's land area is not taxable. We have 80-some% is in federal government hands. Now, we do get some PELT funding, we do get some SRS funding some of the time, not all of the time, but we do get that theoretically as an offset for that, but it's not anywhere near the same if that was taxable real estate. So there's a reason why our budget woes are kind of the way they are. Plus, as Supervisor Riggs said earlier today, Supervisor Riggs, did you run? CAO Riggs, I'll get it right here.
Pay cut.
Yeah, it's a pay cut. CAO Riggs outlined before our, I don't remember where I was going, but there are other reasons why our salaries are 10%, roughly 10 to 13% below median. I got to tell you on behalf of the staff, on behalf of me, for the staff, you're getting your money's worth out of this county staff. There's no doubt about it, and these are tough cuts. So I'm looking at, let's try to reinstate the public safety as much as we can. Let's try and reinstate the bookmobile. Come back on the 3rd, and is there something that any other supervisor would like to throw in the mix to come back on the 3rd? Okay. Is that good enough direction for you, Trace?
So just to be clear, the direction is not to pursue my recommendation for the hall in any sort of way?
We're going to pursue that, but I'm not going to, we've been pursuing it. We will be as offensive as we possibly can. I don't think there's anybody out there that thinks I can't be offensive, so I'll be glad to do that.
Is the animal control?
Animal control is part of public safety.
That's part of, okay.
Okay. All 4 of those bullets up there. Okay, so bring those back, see how well you can balance it. We'll nibble on the margin on the 3rd.
And then one more thing, the fees for, the adjusted fees for the parks, we're going to revisit that.
Yeah, they're gonna have a chance to do a little bit more homework on that.
All right,
That
thank
will-
you.
And what that.
It's a completely separate item from budget, though, because it has to be a public hearing. You need to
Exactly.
consider it. There's a waiting period of about 30 days after you
And
adopt it.
there are some things that we're talking about that are, that might be revenue generators for that as well, that probably it's premature to talk about in public, but we are looking at other avenues to generate revenue. That will be public at the appropriate time, don't get me wrong. Okay, so the only other thing that you really need is, that's guidance. Are you okay with the guidance? Okay, everybody else? Primo. Okay, the other thing you need is either authority or not have authority to begin notifying people.
Okay, and I do one more thing, too. When we're doing, as we wrote up for you for the recommendation,
Yes.
we'd also like to get recommendation for the auditor controller to pay off debt, as well as outlined
Oh.
in the.
Do you need a motion on that, Deb?
As long as you say yes, or nod your heads, I'll.
Okay.
I just don't want to go to jail in September.
Okay, is there any opposition to nodding our collective heads yes? Okay, you got it? Okay.
Supervisor Rutherford, just overall, what I'm hearing is what's contained in the presentation in relation to use of beginning fund balance and then use for paying off debt, doing contingencies, paying unfunded liabilities, all of that, that sounds like your board is good with how it's outlined. It's the ending fund balance where we use existing and current revenues that we would look at adding back your public safety, the bookmobile or any other things that are outlined for extra items.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and then we do need, so we can realize some of those savings in a timely fashion, if and when, well, it's not if, it will be approved, but if some of these conditions occur in the final budget, Tracy needs some help stepping out in the notification process so we can realize the timely savings. So I think you all got a copy of the recommended motion, and Supervisor Gray, I think you were jumping like a frog to make that.
Yeah, I think it was organized that way. Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the CAO and Human Resources issuing layoff notice as outlined in the handout provided by the CAO and all associated restructuring and reorganizations as set forth in the staff report presentation.
And just to be clear, those are notifications only. Action would be determined based on the final budget discussion. Okay. Do I have a second?
I will reluctantly second.
Yeah, me too. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any public comment on the motion? Okay, bring it back to the board. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? 5-0. Okay. Thank you, everyone. We're not done with our agenda, obviously. That was believe it or not, our first agenda item. But we did do 2 other ones before that. Would the clerk of the board please read item 15?
This is consideration of approving plans and a bid book for the contract related to Indian Bar Road Sites 1 through 5 storm damage repair and Indian Bar Site 6 storm damage repair, issuing a call for bids to be due on September 12th at 2 p.m. and 2:15 p.m. respectively, and increase the appropriations in the Public Works Project Fund Indian Bar line item by $2,159,500 and increase the revenue to Public Works Project Fund in the same amount.
Okay, this requires a 4/5 vote. I'll just remind the board of that. And staff report.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. Tanya Sanguinetti, previously Allen, Engineering Manager of your Community Resources Agency. As everyone knew, we were impacted in 2017 with an inundation of storm damage repair. The Italian Bar Road had some significant slides on it. There were 6 different slides in which we have been working closely with Tracy's group and Cal OES and FEMA in order to secure public funds or public assistance funds for those projects. Engineering staff worked with our consultants, Holdridge and Cole, as well as Cal Engineering, in order to produce geotechnical studies, engineering, and eventually to this point of bid documents to repair those slides with permanent restoration. We also went out for a tire-derived grant in order to backfill some of those slides with a less weighted material. In addition, our consultants, Cal Engineering, have come up with construction contract estimates for $1.6 million on sites 1 through 5, and for site 6, about $300,000. This is a little different format that you are not used to seeing. You've only seen it once in the financial impact. And what we're identifying is there's a commitment from the board that we fully fund these projects. So that first table is talking about that. There's only 1 fiscal year in this case in this table. So we're looking at the full gamut. In your proposed budget, when we submitted, when we were looking at the 3 months, what we didn't want to go forward and identify that if we couldn't get this into construction and we had a year delay, we weren't showing the 17 million capital fund in which we were only delivering 8 million. So what we have done is brought forward this table of commitment through the years, as well as now we're requesting your board to move this project into construction, whereas previously in the 3-month adoption, we just kept it so we can continue with our engineering and getting these bid documents forward. So that's where you're going to see the construction contract as 0 in the proposed budget because we were focused on the engineering, and now we're moving forward with construction. So there's where you're seeing that 1.9. A notice of exemption was filed. And I have Dave Ruby here, our project manager, if you have any technical questions on the project. And we recommend that your board approve the bid books for the Italian Bar Road Slides 1 through 5, as well as the Italian Bar Road Site 6, and increase the appropriations to the Public Works account to provide the construction contracts.
Are there questions of staff? Seeing none. Public comment? Seeing none, bring it back to the board. Comments or motion?
Yeah, I did have one question. Do you have, so are these, do you have like a life cycle for these types of repairs? Is it contingent on whether we get another heavy rain event, or are they kind of geared to if we do have another heavy rain event, they should solve the problem?
It's the unpaved part of the road, right?
Right.
Well, unfortunately, we can't make any promises on anything, and in the sites where we do repair them, 3 feet away, it could fail. Unfortunately, that's the reality of these primitive roads that, you know, are 150 years old that were cut in the mining days, and we're still using those same roads. Geotechnically, it's been designed to be much stronger than it currently is. It will repair the slide areas. We've looked at the design very carefully with our consultant team. A couple of the sites were actually found to be slightly deficient on their initial design when they went through design review, and were subsequently redesigned to be fully strong enough to survive a pretty significant storm event. But unfortunately, as engineers, we can't promise any sort of a lifespan on these, nor can we promise a performance level beyond.
I was mainly focused on the repairs themselves and not, I mean, I do realize I've been out on that road a couple of times, as the suspension on my truck will tell you. And it's, you know, there are places that you look at it and you say, this is a county road. But the repaired portions they're built to us. What kind of standard are the repaired portions built to?
So I think, I don't know if this is answering your question. In all of our bid documents through engineering, we require a 1-year warranty. And so that if there was any damage within that year, that it would be onus on the contractor to repair and not the county.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Looking for a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move on staff recommendation.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Got a motion by Supervisor Campbell, second by Supervisor Brennan. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? 4/5, actually 5/5, unanimous. Okay, would the clerk please read item 16?
Consideration of adopting a resolution approving a grant agreement between the California Department of Public Health and Tuolumne County Public Health Department to continue the Women, Infant, Children program.
Little did you know that it would be almost 3:20 when you finally got up here, right?
Right, although I am excited there's not as many people in the room, I'll be honest. My name's Lisa Heapstock. I'm with the Public Health Department. I'm the Programs and Services Manager there. I'm before the board today to ask you to review and approve the Women and Children WIC program agreement. The program's been with the Public Health Department since 1980. We serve about 850 clients a month, and that number has decreased significantly since the recession has kind of tapered off a little bit. And we serve about 150, or almost a third, of the infants born in the community. So The recommendation is for the board to adopt the resolution and approve grant agreement 19-10204 between the California Department of Public Health and the Tuolumne County Public Health Department to continue the Women, Infants, and Children's Program in the amount of $635,769 annually, commencing on October 1st, 2019, and ending on September 30th, 2022, authorizing the board chairman to sign the resolution and grant agreement and the county administrator to sign all further grant-related documents.
Okay, any questions? Public comment? Seeing none, bring it back to the board.
I'll move on staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Brennan, second by Supervisor Campbell. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? 5-0. Okay, would the clerk please read item 17?
Consideration of adopting a resolution approving a grant agreement between the California Department of Public Health and the Tuolumne County Public Health Department to implement the CalFresh Healthy Living Program, previously known as Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Programs Education.
And you enjoyed it so much, you're still here.
I am. I'm asking you to review and approve the CalFresh Healthy Living Agreement. CalFresh Healthy Living Program, formerly known as SNAP-Ed, has been with the Public Health Department since 2013. This fiscal year, they've reached almost 5,000 community members, including 5 Head Starts, 3 schools, including Jamestown Chinese Camp and Tenaya, as well as the 3 youth centers. They're also very involved with the community gardens that are going on in the community. So I am recommending that your board adopt the resolution and approve grant agreement 19-10336 between the California Department of Public Health and the Tuolumne County Public Health Department to implement the CalFresh Healthy Living Program in the amount of $150,000 annually, commencing on October 1st, 2019, and ending September 30th, 2022, authorizing the board chairman to sign the resolution and allow the county administrator to sign the agreement and all further grant-related documents.
Okay. Board questions, clarifications, public comment? Seeing none, bring it back to the board. Looking for a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move on staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Supervisor Campbell, second by Supervisor Gray. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? 5-0. Would the clerk of the board please read item number 18? We scared her away.
Consideration of approving a contract amendment with California Forensic Medical Group and the medical services for inmates of the Tuolumne County Jail and detained youth of the Motherlode Regional Juvenile Detention Facility.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Steve Boyack from the Human Services Agency. Your board approved an agreement on June 18th, just this last June 18th, with WellPath Incorporated for medical services for inmates at our county jail and for detained youth at our juvenile detention facility. Since that time, WellPath has requested that the agreement be amended to include the California Forensic Medical Group as the legal operating entity and exclude WellPath from this agreement. With the help of County Council, a revised agreement and amendment was developed and signed by CFMG. It is our recommendation that your board rescind the June 18, 2019 agreement and approve this particular agreement before you today between the County of Tuolumne and CFMG, the California Forensic Medical Group, for medical services for inmates of the Tuolumne County Jail and detained youth of the Motherlode Regional Juvenile Detention Facility at an annual base cost of $1,204,036.36. We got to get those cents in there. From July 1st, 2019 through June 30, 2020, and authorize the board chair to sign this agreement. Thank you.
Okay, just one real quick question. This does not require a 4/5 vote.
Not that I know of. I don't
Okay.
believe so.
Okay.
To be clear, your board already approved this amount. It's just the name of who the
Okay.
contractor is.
Okay. I would just want to make sure so I know what I'm doing. Okay. Any other clarifications by the board?
Does this amount include dental or vision services, or is this strictly medical care?
This is strictly medical care.
Do you know what the additional costs would be for those other services?
So we have contracts in place for jail medical. I don't know what the contract amount is right now, but with the jail medical and the dental and the meds that we pay for through the jail, it's hovering around about 1.6 million, I believe, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, public comment? Seeing none, bring it back to the board.
Move on
Sorry.
staff recommendation.
Second, since I haven't got
Okay.
one today.
Supervisor Kirk woke up. Okay, a motion by I know you were awake. Supervisor Gray moved and Supervisor Kirk seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained.
Thank you.
5-0, thank you. Would the clerk of the board please read item number 19?
Oh, shoot.
Reports.
Okay, clerk of the board,
Nothing to report, thank you.
County
I
Council.
have a report. Well, first of all, it's Miss Drivdahl's birthday today, and normally we would sing to her, but I think today she should sing to us. That's my request.
Okay, you have your spot at the mic.
This is the song that never ends. Yes, it goes on and on, my friend. Some people started singing it, not knowing what it was, but they'll continue singing it forever just because this is the song that never ends.
Your 3
Yes,
minutes
it
are
goes-
up. I'm sorry.
And I actually have one more important report as well, and it's about Carlin's amazing work. So as your board knows, Mr. Lupo sued the county for your board's approval of a wireless tower up in Cold Springs. And due to Carlin, the judge actually granted our motion to dismiss. So we're really proud of that.
Good job.
Happy birthday, and thank you. Okay, is that your report? Okay, go ahead.
So I will get an opportunity to go to lead next week. I'll be gone. So anybody who has agenda items that are going to be on the September 3rd, to please pass them on to Christina, and I'll send a follow-up email to that.
Okay.
She's the backup there.
Thank you. Do well at lead. CAO.
The only thing I have this time is just a thank you to everyone who helped work on the budget. You guys have all said it, but we spent a lot of long evenings, my staff, and, I mean, we were here till after 9 last night. We've had other nights like that, but all the other departments have done the same type of work. So appreciate everyone coming together. You already said it's not been easy. It's not easy, and it won't be easy as we work through these coming months. And then secondly, we do have our first regional meeting with our other 5 counties for our fire group, and we will meet this Thursday in Sacramento. Our CRC is now facilitating our group, so we will, we'll come back with an update after that.
Right. And it wasn't just evenings, it was weekends too, that the staff has been working on this, so. Supervisor Kirk.
I've actually been thinking so much about the budget, I didn't write anything down for reports, but lots of meetings. I guess I'm still smiling.
Okay.
That's it.
Supervisor Campbell.
Yeah, I realize how far behind I am. We haven't done reports in a long time. Yeah, so many meetings. I'll just mention a few things. I attended the Central Sierra Economic Development District last week. We heard a really interesting report at the Tuolumne County Transportation Council about electric vehicles and what the feasibility is for those, developing infrastructure for that in our community. I also attended the Crystal Falls Homeowners Association meeting and, was able to hear some of the concerns they have up there. A lot of it centers around roads and fire safety, which has become a pretty familiar theme in the past year. I also attended a Amador-Tuolumne County Action Agency training session. Got to learn about that organization's history and how it operates and the many wonderful things it does in our community. And then I'll just close by saying, so I'm doing work with the Tuolumne County Access Tuolumne Cable 8, and we are we finally have entered a partnership with an individual who's going to cover football and basketball games for us. And so we're going to be bringing higher quality resolution. We're going to be airing all the sporting events. And it's going to be a real improvement, I think, for student athletes and for families interested in our sports. And we've got some real good prospects this year. So I think both our high schools are going to do really well. And watch it on Access Tuolumne.
Supervisor Gray.
No report.
Supervisor Brennan.
So I will make this brief, even though there's so much to report out on. First, our Scott Anetto with our UC Extension has been on sabbatical, and he has been working on this field guide to Weeds Forge's native to the Central Sierra watershed. And thank you to a lot of our local organizations. They donated $5,000, so there are copies of these for free in the UC Extension office, and they're incredibly well done with photographs, talks about habitat reproduction, and most importantly, control methods. So if anybody's interested in a copy, you can get them at the UC office on Washington Street. At the RCRC meeting this last week, there was a lot of information that was presented that had to do with legislation. I am now leaving a copy of these in back here with Alicia. If anyone is interested, please reach out to me, and I will talk to you about individual items specifically. A number of these I've already forwarded to staff because we need to have staff's analysis on as they impact different departments. And there is a lot going on around water, hemp, the PG&E settlement, and justice, criminal justice. The last piece that I am really happy to report on is that Commissioner Laura is scheduled to be in Tuolumne County to meet with our citizens on August 29th, 6 p.m. at the Opera Hall. And again, this is something that we've been working on, and so I am anticipating that we will have a good crowd in attendance for his conversation with Tuolumne County residents. That was August 29th, 6 p.m. at the Opera Hall. That's my
Okay.
report.
Well, I just have been very busy working with the staff on the budget and a lot of things. It's been very, very intensive, the amount of time I've spent with them. And they probably would just as soon I didn't spend that much time, but it's been a very important exercise. That's been my primary focus for the last 2 weeks, actually the last 4 weeks. And I want to thank them for providing me as much input as they have. I do think that our process is much better than it's been in the past. I have a great deal more confidence in the output that we're getting, confidence in our staff, and also the entire rest of the board. And I do want to thank, and unfortunately 98% of them aren't here, but I do want to thank every member of our public that was interested. I got the feeling that over the course of the last 2 months that the understanding of the effort that's been going on in the staff towards coming up with a budget solution that meets the law and meets our needs in this county, that the public understanding of what we've been going through is much higher than it's ever been before. And I want to thank the staff for their efforts in that regard, not just in meetings and stuff like that, but the explanations on the radio, interviews, and different other efforts that we've made. So again, it's been a very busy 2 months, and I want to thank all the members of the staff that participated in that. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close this up, and I'm going to, at 3:32:12, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance.